Good evening and welcome to the October 19, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting. My name is James McCartney. I'm your chairman. I ask that we all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the
United States of America,
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. We'll do a quick roll call. Supervisor Lewis,
Present.
Supervisor Grenier, Supervisor Blundy,
Here.
Supervisor Weiss.
Here.
Excellent. Just a reminder, public comment on agenda items will be taken as each item is discussed. We have some community announcements. I think I'll do them, Chief. A reminder, during the portion of the agenda, residents and youth organizations may call in to make a special announcement or contact the township at admin@lmt.org to request a special announcement be added to the agenda. The styrofoam recycling event will be held at the Township Building, 1100 Edgewood Road, on Saturday, October 29th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to noon. Bring your styrofoam, wine corks, amber white plastic pill containers, and alkaline household batteries. The EAC will be hosting a Halloween candy wrapper recycling event from November 1st to November 5th and November 7th through November 10th between 8 a.m. to 4:30. Drop-off boxes will be located in the lobby of the community center located at 1550 Oxford Valley Road and the Township Building located at 1100 Edgewood Road. Runners from beginner to advanced are invited to run the 5K/10K race at Makefield Highlands Golf Course on November 4th. All proceeds will be donated to Folds of Honor. To register, please visit irun.redpodium.com/race the course-22. Sponsors are State Farm Insurance. I believe there's also a golf outing that day. So if anybody's interested in playing golf prior to the run or playing golf and then doing the run, it's up to you. The annual Veterans Parade and Ceremony will be celebrated on November 5th, 2022 with the Lower Makefield Veterans Committee. The parade will run along Edgewood Road from Whitehall Drive to Heacock Road and conclude with a ceremony at Veterans Square. The parade will start promptly at 1 p.m. Come join us and line the streets for our veterans. Sponsors for this event are Artist Memory Care and Commonplace Reader. And Lower Makefield Township will be hosting a blood drive for the Red Cross on Wednesday, November 23rd, 2022, from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the meeting room at the Township Building, 1100 Edgewood Road, Yardley, PA. Moving on to agenda item number 5, consider approval of minutes for September 21st, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blundy, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Turn it over to Supervisor Blundy for the treasurer's report.
Yeah, thank you, James. I will make a motion to consider approval of the September 2022 interfund transfers in the amount of $1,267,664.08.
Do I hear a second?
Fred waved.
Oh, he waved. Motion made by Supervisor Blundy, waived by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. And I believe you have one more.
Yes, I'll make a motion to consider approval of the warrant list from October 3rd and October 17th, 2022 in the amount of $1,986,611.08.
I'll second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blundy, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, motion carry. I'm sorry. Call to question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Got ahead of myself there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Pockel, engineers report.
Yes, hello supervisors. I will jump right into the agenda items. The first item is to consider change order number 2 for a contract time extension of 40 days for the road program project. This change order is necessary for several reasons. One, the contractor has run into some supply chain issues with obtaining detectable warning surfaces for the ADA ramps. That's kind of held them up throughout the project. In addition to that, Pico is doing work on Dickinson Drive and Quincy Drive, which is a part of the road program. So that held the contractor up from completing paving on those two roadways. And then also we have our storm sewer project on Maple Vale Drive, which has not been completed yet. So that's the contractor's not going to pave the road until that's completed as well. So this is a time extension for 40 days. The original completion date was October 13th. The new completion date will be November 22nd. And the contractor is not intending to demobilize from the site or anything like that. So this wouldn't incur any demobilization and remobilization charges. So it's a zero cost change order for a time extension.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve change order number 2 for contract time extension of 40 days for the 2022 road program.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
Really quick. With respect to Mapleville, the stormwater issues, do we think that 40 days is enough, or do we have to carve that out?
No, we think the 40 days will be enough.
Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Next would be to consider pay application number 3 for the 2022 road program in the amount of $65,548.50. This is for work completed as of September 1st. This was originally going to be at the second meeting in September. However, the contractor did not have their backup paperwork submitted to us in time for us to process it for that meeting. Then there was no meeting at the beginning of October, and so it is now up on this agenda. So this is for work that is milling of roadways and inlet repairs and ADA ramp upgrades. The work has been completed for over a month, so we're recommending payment in the amount of $65,548.50.
Mr. Chair, I move that we consider pay application number 3 for the 2022 road program in the amount of $65,548.50.
Motion made by Supervisor Lewis, seconded by Supervisor Granier. Any discussion?
Actually, on the Maple Vale issues, we're talking about that. There has been some questions about line of sight issues related to branches and stuff like that around the signs there. And I know Tom Roach has followed up on that. But will the crews look at that when they're doing the paving as well? Just kind of make sure all the signs are visible as well?
We can have, I mean, generally that would fall on township maintenance.
Yeah,
So I can have our inspector take a look at that one.
okay.
Out there inspecting the. project.
Making sure yeah. Awesome.
Any other discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, and I think you have one more for us, Andy.
I do. That would be consider pay application number 4. This is for work completed as of September 30th or October 1st. And for the 2022 road program in the amount of $1,042,448.30. So the amount that is on the agenda is incorrect. The correct amount is $1,042,448.30. That's for milling a number of roadways throughout the Tanglewood development and the Skylar Drive area that are within the road program. And then also paving a lot of the roads that are in the south portion of the township. So the work is completed. We are still about, I would say, another $1.5 million as far as the amount of money that we're withholding for the project. So we're recommending payment in the amount of $1,042,448.30. $448.30.
Mr. Chair, I move that the board consider pay application number 4 for the 2022 road program in the amount of $1,042,448.30.
Motion made by Supervisor Lewis, seconded by Supervisor Grenier. Andy, real quick, is that a typo or is we were 4,000 below budget? On that,
I'm sorry.
was that a typo? The $1,046,000? Was it a typo?
Yes,
That was
yes.
just a typo. Okay. Any other discussion, questions? Any public comment? Sure.
There's issues that are arising as with any road program as far as the contractor, their equipment that vibrates. And so then you have a crack in the curb and then a chunk of the curb falls out, or there's things like that. But the contractors agreed to address all of those. And so, and as far as the budget is concerned, we're under budget at this point. So.
Excellent. Any other comments, public? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Andy, are you going to be doing project updates for us as well?
Yeah, Andy should brief the board on the Memorial Park.
Thank you, Chief.
So last week we sent we haven't gotten much response from the contractor as far as to address the items that are outstanding on the Memorial Park project. So last week we sent a certified letter to their bonding company, which it's been my experience that usually provides a little bit more pressure on the contractor if they understand that getting their bond or for future projects is in jeopardy because they haven't closed out this project. And the fact that DCNR, a lot of these comments are generated from the DCNR inspection. So I think that's going to prompt them to get the work done. I think that we're still within the window of good weather where the work can be done, but that window's closing quickly. So
Do you have specific punch list items that you're referring to?
we do.
Okay. And then how much is left in escrow that we're holding?
We're over $11,000 in escrow.
Do any of those punch lists?
Well, it's not escrow. Yeah, it's
just withheld.
basically- Yeah,
Yeah.
it's being withheld. Yeah.
Do any of those punch list items have anything to do with the pickleball courts?
Yes. So in fact, a majority of the
they're all-
punch list items have
They're all pickleball.
not all of them. There's the ADA signs for the parking spaces over by the pickleball courts. There's the cracking on the surface at the pickleball courts, and then the gates, repairing the
Still
gates.
still
Yeah.
an issue. Okay. Excellent. Any other questions regarding the Memorial Park project? Dan?
Do those punch list items also include the compaction?
Yeah, the stone area over, where the spoil area, the needed top dress to see that,
Like you said,
windows closing, yes.
I
I
was-
questions.
Yeah,
about
keep going.
Memorial Park?
Other projects.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, after Memorial. Yeah. So you have a Memorial Park?
Yeah, so if they don't come around by the next meeting, will we remind people who the contractor is and their name in public?
We can tell them that it's Miko Constructors right now. That's,
Okay.
That's-
Where is
that's
Miko
public knowledge.
Constructors located?
they have several, they're a large outfit. So they're-
We'll make sure the
The-
pickleball ball mob gets that information.
All right.
Any other comments on Memorial Park? Any public comment regarding Memorial Park? All right, so we'll move to the multi-use trail and then we'll circle back to you. Yep. So multi-use trail, if you want to give us an update on that as well?
That's
Not
a
you?
project that's out of my purview, yes.
Not okay. Yeah. It looks like the work's in progress and it's anticipated to be completed by the end of the year. So Dan, if you wanted to ask some other project updates from Andy?
Good segue since it's update on Woodside Road.
Contracts are being signed as we speak. So we anticipate having a pre-construction meeting with the contractor before the next meeting. And from then we'll get a better idea. They still have a lot of submittals that they have to send to us as far as the type of stone, the type of asphalt, and some of the drainage products that they're going to be using. So I'm not sure how long that paperwork will take, but once we have a pre-construction meeting, we'll have a better idea as far as when they'll actually be putting shovel in the ground.
Anyone else have questions on Woodside Road, just in case? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking if anyone else had a question on Woodside Road. And then the other one, Andy, I think this is under your purview, but the Skylar tennis court.
Skylar Drive tennis courts.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that work has started. That started on yesterday. So they began milling the existing tennis courts. They anticipate probably 2 weeks and 2 to 3 weeks, and they'll be completed. So they're hitting the ground running.
and I'm wondering if they're running a little too fast. There were some photos posted to social media from the township's Facebook page of the work. And they've obviously have done a lot of earth disturbance. And I don't see, and we're also directly uphill from, was it Rock Creek back there?
Yes.
And I don't see any erosion control devices at all on the edge of that. And there's a lot of dirt moving here. So I'm curious if they did not implement an ENS plan, and who could we get to make sure that they get that fixed pretty quickly, so we don't have a compliance issue, because it's a lot of dirt.
We'll take a look at that. There was an ENS plan in place to install silt sock downgrade. I will say this, that the milling of the tennis courts is not necessarily considered earth disturbance as in accordance with the Bucks County Conservation District. So because,
Limited to tennis courts in this picture.
yeah,
Why don't we just defer that to Derek and have Derek go out tomorrow?
Oh,
and
exactly. Yeah,
check?
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and if it's in place, fine. If it's not, yeah,
This
we're good with that.
Any other question on project updates for Andy? Okay, hearing none, we are going to move over to agenda item number 9, Park and Recreation. Is somebody here? Oh, there she is. How are you?
So,
For those of you who don't know, this is Monica Tierney. She is our Director of Parks and Recs, and she's recently got the Park and Rec Department CAPRA certified. So I'm going to keep clapping about that for the rest of the year. So take it away.
I'm pretty excited about that myself. I'm glad. So today I'm here, you asking you shall receive. We went after some grants. One of them is the Pico Green Region Grant. I was looking at all of our projects we've been talking about, and luckily CAPRA set us right up for this doing the ADA transition plan. We were able to come up with a project that fit in the scope of work and the amount of money that would be offered in this grant, which is an accessibility project at 5 Mile Woods. We would need to match this grant 10,000, be it a $10,000 grant, $10,000 match from the township, from looking for that from fee in lieu of money. And that work would be done by Friends of 5 Mile Woods and the staff. So it'd just be mostly for the supplies to be able to get the job done. So that's kind of how we're looking to do this project. So I'm asking for your approval for a so one thing I did leave out is it would be 600 feet of trail. So they'd be able to get back to the vernal pools at 5 Mile Woods. So it'd be 600 feet of trail that's accessible, ADA accessible. And it's also two parking spaces with ADA lines. So it'd be all done in-house. So the resolution I'm asking for you to approve today is a resolution authorizing the application. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. A resolution authorizing the application to Pico Green Region Grant Open Space Program for the 5 Mile Woods ADA Accessibility Enhancement Project for the amount of $10,000 match.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have
Supervisor Blondie.
yeah, Monica,
Mhm.
how wide is the path?
I believe it's 48 inches. We did it in compliance with the ADA standards.
So I'm wondering, and I'm especially excited to hear that it's going to be done locally. So maybe there's more flexibility to make that a little bit wider. I get that, 48 inches is the requirement, but two people are not walking side by side. So, and if we have people coming in either direction, I know that there are little cutoffs and stuff, but can we make it wider?
We
48
can.
inches seems very narrow to me.
We can, it would just either shorten the length of the path or it would be more money to invest, which is something we could always do later as part
Oh.
if we just,
Or we could use more of our fee in lieu of money
yes.
to make up the difference, right? And therefore have really a more, I'm not looking for it to be 10 feet wide, but just, most of our paths are wider than that. I know oftentimes it's because we're also accommodating bicycles, but I just think a walking path should be a little bit wider than 4 feet.
That is definitely something we could look at. Now, the plan for ADA accessibility, just making sure that everybody knows it'd be every 200 feet, there'd be a bump out. So there'd be a passing lane. And then at the end, there'd be a platform that looks over the vernal pools with some education to be able to learn a little bit about, the ecosystem out there. So that's part of the grant too.
Yeah, no, that all sounds great, but do I hear 5 feet? Maybe 6 feet.
Yeah, just in discussions with Andy, that would be about another $10,000 that the township would have to approve. So possibly tonight, we could amend that if the board pleases to add a maximum in addition to the match, $10,000.
Well, the resolution would have to be for 10,000, but if the board so chooses, we'd have to do 20,000.
That's what I'm asking the board.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Does the maker of the motion want to make an amendment?
Sure. Be happy to do it.
All right, so we
And
have
I-
an amended motion and an amended second. We're still in discussion. Go ahead.
What constitutes a path? Like, are you putting, just clearing 4 feet and making sure it's maintained at 4 feet on the existing surface? Or are you putting a new surface down in the middle of the woods? And bump outs and signage in addition to that? What's it gonna look like?
So we're going to, it's the composite wood. So we plan to use composite wood. There's already wood out there, a decking. So it'd be a composite wood decking that goes.
Oh,
up.
yeah, okay. So
Yes.
We're gonna. like,
Sorry, I didn't.
Deck or something similar
Yes.
to that.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
would be replacing the sort of I run out there all the time.
Mhm.
So it's just replacing the decking, some of which is falling apart.
Yeah, yes. And then adding decking where there isn't decking to be able to go the length. Now, some of the decking is very outdated and slippery and, so,
Lengths wide and,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're not putting in fill, we're putting in,
Decking,
because it's a lot of floodplain, so if there's a flood, it'll lift and it won't.
yes.
That's actually okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're doing signage as well?
Yes, there'll be some educational signage that I'll work with John. John and I have been talking about this all along the way, right when we found this opportunity, John and I have been talking. That's John Helferty. And he will help me with educational sign at the site. So he's very excited about this project.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's helpful. I wasn't sure exactly what we
Yes.
were implementing. Good.
Mhm.
Supervisor Lewis?
Yep. One quick friendly amendment. This would be resolution 22-11. According to the solicitor.
That's what we think. As you know, we changed the numbering of the resolutions from just consecutive, go back to the beginning of time to annual, and Supervisor Lewis and I were consulting one another. We believe this is 11. So if not, we can always amend the record later.
Just, I don't know, the motion needs amended or revised for that, but just so that it's noted.
For the bookkeepers, it's 22-11, the 2022-11, we believe. We'll confirm that. Okay,
And the next one obviously be 12. So
got you,
it would be corrected if necessary based upon.
got you.
I see it in the bullet point here, but just so we everyone knows the Disability Advisory Board does support the project, has reviewed it,
And the park board.
and the park board.
Any other supervisor questions on this motion? Any public comments? Just to confirm, there is it was an amended motion by Supervisor Weiss indicating it was going to be a 10,000, but no greater than 20,000.
Correct.
Excellent. I just wanted to clarify that for the board. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
So
I think you have one more for us.
yes. One more resolution for you. The next resolution is some of the projects that were approved as part of the sewer proceed fund added up to $280,000. There was this pop-up grant from DCNR in where we could combine some of those projects, and the projects include the ADA accessibility projects at Veterans Square and Memorial, which is the shade structure and the rubberized surface at Memorial Park. And at Veterans Square, it's actually building out the remainder of the park. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and show you, because there are some revisions to the old plan that we'd have to make in order to move forward with the ADA
Please do.
accessibility. All right, can you see that there? So this is the old plan. Right here, you can see how the parking lot bumps into the parking lot with a shade structure, which was supposed to be a pavilion there. After meeting with the Veterans Square Committee or Foundation, because we recognize this as being a problem for ADA accessibility, they were okay with us making some amendments to this site as long as everything was included. So Andy helped come up with a kind of a modern or a modified, just showing some of the ADA accessibility. So this would be paving of the parking lot along with the ADA accessibility sites, the playground improvements plus the shade structure is what we'd be applying for. The full amount of the grant is $440,000 that we're looking. The township match would be $220,000. The amount of money we set aside from the sewer fund for all these projects was $280,000. So there's a little bit of leeway there, maybe for soft costs or whatever might be needed. But this is be more of the new layout. We just really wanted to show the parking lot more or less, how that would have to change. The shade structure could change in location. There's been some discussion about where that will go and what it will look like. And that's something that we can meet about at a later date. But for the application of the grant, we're looking at paving the full lot, finishing or making the updates to the playground that are necessary. It's like 20+ years old, and adding a shade structure, more like a pavilion or a pergola to the site. So, and maybe some seating, and then a full loop bike path for walking. So those are some of the things that we were looking at. Oh, and a pollinator garden. I just wanted to include that in there. So that would all be included for less than we expected to spend with sewer proceeds, but we'd be able to complete out and build out all Veterans Square, finish the project. And that I just wanted to bring that to you for resolution. And then Memorial Park, there's been cracking in the playground. There's a lot of the playground that looks like that needs to be replaced. It's at the end of its usable life, and adding shade, both ADA projects, both part of the ADA transition plan, as with a lot of the veterans changes. So I just wanted to bring this to you, looking for the approval of the resolution authorizing the application to Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources grant improvements to Veterans Square Park and the Secret Garden Memorial Park for $220,000 match.
So
Do I hear a
moved.
motion?
Second,
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blondie. Any discussion?
Can you go back to the plan for the Veterans Square?
The update.
Yep, yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Thank you. one of the announcements we didn't make tonight because we just got it was that there's another event on the 11th in Yardley Borough. Get to, but because we have it makes me think of this. What will the layout look like when we have the parade and everything there now? Is there,
Well, there would have to be some changes to the layout. That would be in discussion as part of the event, to be honest.
yeah.
We don't know what that would look like for sure. Now, the original pavilion, when I talked to veterans, the Veterans Committee, this one here, I thought that was meant to be a stage. It was never meant to be a stage. It was meant to be shade structure. They corrected me. So we continued with the shade structure and just moved it to a different location in order to fix the playground. We might be tweaking this with time. The grant really will cover the stuff in the grant. We might make some but as long as we, keep it to the grant. Yeah.
I just want to make sure as go through the planning process, just make sure we consider potential events there, whether it's, Veterans Day or something else, because we want to make sure that the veterans can use it for those events.
Yes, and that is the plan. The intention is to still use it for Veterans Day parade and ceremony. We might just have to change the way we lay out a stage or the way we do the miking or whatever.
I guess my other question, how does, how do they all fit in the same, like, would they would all be covered under a single grant, or would we?
It would all be one grant. It's because they're like projects, we're putting them into one grant application.
We get for different sites, and
2 different sites, but ADA modifications.
so ADA is the key.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
And monuments. Our 2 monuments of the township are both receiving ADA improvement. 9/11 and
9/11 is, so, okay, so that's considered part of the 9/11 money?
well, the 9/11 is housed at the park.
Thank you.
Any other supervisor questions?
Should we consider a not to exceed 280 cap like we did kind of on that last one?
Would the maker of the motion amend it?
Yes, not to exceed $280,000 per match.
Seconder of the motion accepts
Yep.
the amended?
Of course, yep.
Awesome, all right.
Any other public comment regarding the resolution? Hearing none, call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Aye.
5-0. And I believe that's all you had for us?
Don't go anywhere, Monica.
Well, that's all you had for us, but Chief,
Yeah,
take it away, sir.
yeah, item A is to consideration to proceed with the public process for Snipes Track. This is actually a request from Monica, so I'll turn it over to her to present to the board and to the public.
Sure. It is really just simply that. I want to ask your permission to proceed with having conversations with the public about Snipes as we start to get information back from the Makefield Park study. And as we're looking at a naturalist to review the park, the biological studies, it'd be great to have permission from you to be able to start having those public discussions with the information in hand. I can come up with a full schedule. I don't anticipate that would start until maybe January as a real good timeline by the time we get information back from the other studies. But I'd like to put out a schedule, come up with something with the staff and start arranging those public meetings and having that public for the park.
Do we need a consensus or actual motion?
You want a motion, I'd be happy to make it.
Sure. I'll entertain a motion to consideration to proceed with the public process for Snipes Track. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Supervisor Blondie, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. Any discussion? Take it away.
Or, I will not be voting in favor of this motion. I'll say that up front, not because I'm totally against anything ever happening at Snipes. But because a few months ago or so, we had a really thoughtful conversation. I think a lot of people in the room here were there about how we take a step back and look at how we manage park and rec in general with the leagues and our fields and everything else. And I think the board did a good job moving forward with the Makefield study so that we can begin to do that. I think we'll hopefully get good information and great participation there, and we'll figure out what we can do at Makefield and also what may come out of that for potential future use at Snipes and other places. I think it's way premature to do anything at Snipes right now. And that's why my opinion is that's why we had that discussion a few months ago. I'm kind of embarrassed that this is on the agenda tonight, to be honest with you. Because when we start talking about doing a public process at Snipes, for those that really want something at Snipes, it sort of taints the process and makes it look like we're just going through the motions at Makefield to make sure that we can get Snipes. And I don't think that's fair to anybody, regardless of how you feel about Snipes going forward. So I would definitely not in favor of starting Snipes now. When we get something back from Makefield and everyone can vet the Makefield study and see what we're going to do there, then we can pivot and see what we might do at Snipes, and then we can have a thoughtful process about Snipes as we go through. That's what the Play for All recommended. That's I intend to support moving forward. That's all.
Thank you. Any other supervisor comment?
Yeah, I'm equally concerned. I have a process issue too, in that the interim township manager isn't actively saying, hey, this is a policy I'm supporting. It's just being placed on the agenda. I concur with Supervisor Grenier on this. Part of the reason why we selected the firm that we selected for the Makefield study was they included in detail a comprehensive fields utilization analysis, right? And the other ones, by the way, the one that that I think all of us voted for unanimously had that in there. And that was one of the driving reasons why I voted for that particular firm and that reason. It troubles me when we want to put the cart before the horse. The last study we looked at this was Solicitor Truelove. When did we look at the 3.5 field plan? That was 2017. So in 2017, there was a Bucks County Planning Commission study done. And that study it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we need X number of fields. It's the end and is near. It was, they could be helpful, right? Since then, we've had significant changes in demographics, changes in sports preference. And so it seems to me wrong to engage the community with something where they don't know exactly what they're engaging with. If, for example, this report comes back from the consultant and it says, we need 5 fields, or we need 1, or we don't need any, we don't know that. And engaging with the public, unfortunately, is, as Supervisor Grenier, is just not fair to both the public and supporters and opponents of this project. So we want to give at least people should feel like the township is objectively reviewing projects, that they feel like that outside folks with specialties are consulted and their advice and the analysis is considered well before decisions are offered or pre-digested for the community. And then only then do we have a case for or against whatever, then we can suggest different alternatives for what could be done with the Snipes tract. As you may know, I voted for the original plan in 2017 when it was. It was a difficult decision compounded by, again, then litigation. So my concern is with this, collectively, we want the community to feel comfortable that the decisions we make are done with significant due diligence. And I can tell you when they're not, people are unhappy with that. And the results may be negative compared to what we would prefer. Again, if the study comes out and says we need X fields, right? And we all agree that the study is valid, then we can go to the community and say, hey, this is what we're learning. This is what we think. These are the trade-offs. The community can then weigh in and say, well, I like this, I don't like this, or I'm against this, or I'm in favor of all of it. And we can have that dialogue in a more constructive way. Absent that, we're not sure what they're supposed to comment on. if they're not, if they don't have a plan from them or concept for them to work on, or at least design charrettes, you're going to engender only people that are opposed to speak up, right? The most vehemently opposed, and their position will be likely nothing ever, right? Or the proponents will be, hey, we want 5 fields, right? That discussion's better had later in the process. And it really bothers me that this is being brought up from a process perspective, because I thought we all had agreement that we were going to look at this objectively. It's, to me, very frustrating when we get one line that it's like, oh, wait, this undoes what I thought we all agreed to. So I'm frustrated by that. I am also a solid no on it as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Lewis. Any other supervisor comments?
James,
Yes, Supervisor Weiss.
is Monica still in the room?
She is. Yeah, she didn't run out yet.
So Monica, can you define public process a little bit to give us a little context and what your goal is? Your short-term goal?
I mean, right now, it would just be, I wouldn't want to do this before the first habitat assessment. So unfortunately, I couldn't give you this for this meeting because I wasn't going to meet with Natural Lands until Monday. But I did have a meeting with Natural Lands to discuss assessment of the parks. I don't mind sharing that with you today. It wasn't on the agenda, but it's just extra bonus news there. So essentially what we're looking at with them, I'm hoping that we can partner with them in this process. They've come out to the site in December. It'd be a 2-season analysis. So December and in the spring, and look at the site and do a full assessment, habitat assessment, as we discussed in the meeting the other day. Unfortunately, I don't have full language because I didn't get a quote yet or any of the, and to be honest, you'd be better at that language than I would be. But to do a complete habitat assessment, they do it in the winter, see what the habitat is like. They'd give us a report. And then in the spring, they could go and do the habitat assessment again and see if there's any new growth or anything worth noting in the spring. They'd be very happy to do that. They discussed it at length with us. We had a nice long meeting with myself, 2 people from Natural Lands, and 2 of our other staff, Jim Majewski and Dan McLone. And it was a really productive conversation. They do have to still give me a quote, which I have not received yet, but I do think they'd be a great partner in this to really discover. We've been listening to the residents. The residents are saying they're worried about the habitat, to assess the habitat and see where we can have the least amount of impact on the environment as we go forward with that. So we'd have those 2 things in place. Natural process would go, or the public process would go along with that process and with the Makefield Park study. So the study should, in the first 3 months, have some data for us to start working off of. We would have some initial roll up your sleeve workshop conversation. First initial conversation is, this is the facts. These are all the figures. This is what we've come up with. What are your thoughts for for Snipes? And they could have initial discussion about what they'd like to see on the site, knowing what they know at that time. And then a second meeting would be with a little bit more information, maybe initial drawings, and we could have a roll up your sleeve. More so, we would also still have public meetings. We would have park and rec meetings and plenty of other opportunity for the public to be involved. And that's baseline. Baseline would be 2 public workshop, roll up your sleeve, get involved. There's other opportunity where we could have a committee if you wanted. So you should choose that kind of reviews along the way, a steering committee like we're doing for the Makefield Park study. So there's other opportunity for community feedback, but it's a real workshop, real getting involved, seeing what the facts and figures are, and letting all the intelligent, great-minded people of Lower Makefield Township put their input in. And that's what I'm looking to do, so that we can have a long-term plan for community that they can see and well in advance, make plans around, and get into. What, I wanted to be able to give them a lot of opportunity to be able to plan their lives around what of what we're offering. So that's really what public engagement I'm looking for. There would be further public engagement through the regular process too, but this is extra.
So if I'm hearing you properly, and I could be misunderstanding you, this further process, excuse me, this further process with public input and what the contractors are doing with the master plan of Macclesfield, we may find that through this process that we have limits on what can be developed, if anything, at Snipes.
Yes.
So, I think that, this isn't really putting the cart before the horse. It's more like expanding the scope a little bit so that while we're working on Macclesfield, we can know what the limitations of Snipes are by these further processes and engaging the public as well. Am I following you properly?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Can you repeat that, Fred? I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll try.
It wasn't you, it's us.
I'm trying to process on.
So in doing an environmental assessment, which we've already approved, an habitat assessment, and working with the contractors of the Macclesfield plan and with the general public, we can get a better context, better flavor of what can be done at Snipes, if anything. So we may find that Snipes can't be used for fields. We may find that we're limited in what can be done at Snipes, or we may find that because of, what happens at Macclesfield will change the whole concept of what happens at Snipes. Working with that in tandem doesn't seem to be putting the cart before the horse in this case, if that's what you're telling us. If that's what I'm hearing is correct.
Can I just ask a quick question? What's your timeline on the public input of Snipes? When did you want to kick that off?
Well, the first assessment, if we go forward with the natural lands quote, once they give it to us, the first assessment would be done in December.
Okay.
So we would have that back, and then we would have all the mathematical data back from Macclesfield Park. So we'd have a firm idea. They've already done 2 assessments out there, one in the evening on a Wednesday evening, which is the busiest evening, and one on a Saturday morning through the whole morning timeline until, the main chunk of the games were done. So they've already done that. We'd have a lot of it. They already have all the numbers, all the leak numbers and all the data. So we'd have a lot of feedback already from the Macclesfield Park plan. So I'd be looking at, say, January as a start for a first public meeting to kind of take a look at that information. And then moving forward from there, there'd be more information coming from MAC, from the committee. There will also be 2 meetings going on for MAC at the same time. So there'd be more information coming from MAC. And then we'd have the second assessment, and then we could do a follow-up meeting with maybe some drawings. And that would, that one would be a hard call. I'd say probably around March-ish.
So you're saying at the first meeting that you'd have data points from Macclesfield as far as usage already wrapped up, and you would have the initial December assessment and the biological assessment at Snipes wrapped up.
Yeah, a lot of the data would be wrapped up. The last 3 months of the Macclesfield would be essentially coming up with the report, coming up with recommendations based on what the committee's findings were, public feedback findings were. That's kind of essentially what the end piece of the Macclesfield Park study.
And when you say committee, you mean the Parks and Rec committee? Correct?
No, we did form a steering committee
Okay.
for we have some residents involved, some neighbors involved, some league heads involved, a member from the EAC, a member from the Disability Advisory Board, and a member from the Park Board involved. It's 9-member steering committee.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you're talking public hearings starting in January, maybe second week of January, around that time?
Yeah,
Okay.
sometime in January. I'd
Does
have
that
to see when
change your
everybody's
opinion of
available.
timeline at all, or does that change your
No.
opinion of timeline?
Yeah, this is, so first, just let me address Supervisor Weiss's comments. We've already proven that there's nothing stopping us from putting fields there ecologically or anything because we've gone through that process. So I don't think that that's likely to change at all. But you're telling me the report's not going to be finalized for 3 months from now? Or
Which
when's
one?
the Macclesfield study?
The date, we'll have data. The report won't be done for 6 months, but we'll have data back on that.
Hold on, though. We
Yeah.
won't have a complete report for 6 months.
Mm-mm. Well, not a plan. We wouldn't have a complete plan for 6 months.
But we have a complete report in 3 months,
We'd have a report from the data, yes, in 3 months'
a
time.
written report in 3 months.
Yes, 3 months' time.
Okay, so 3 months from now is when? Because it's November, well, October.
Be January.
Huh?
Be January, right?
Yeah. Well, huh?
Holidays probably February with.
Yeah, February. I guess I'm
3
having real
months from now,
trouble.
January. October, November, just January. 3 months from now is January.
Yeah, I guess my concern is why schedule this? Why not let people first have a chance to read the report before scheduling the meetings? Again, if you had come to us in mid-January and say, hey, I'd like to start the process and I want to do a meeting in February after the report's done, that seems to me fine, because then you could say, this is what the report says. This is what it thinks the outcome should be. And now we're going to start engaging the community on that. That to me seems reasonable. And then participants in the process will say, okay, now I can read the full report. I'm not going to be sitting here trying to make my assessment based on, without having the full report. That seems unfair to the public. Why not let the report finish before having, public meetings? It just seems like for folks who are concerned about this process, it doesn't build trust. And that's why run the process normally, get the reports done, right? Let everybody review the reports, start the process after that. I guess I'm not understanding, am I?
I agree with you, and I do these processes a lot. And if we're gonna do a true plan, and I think we are, it's what was voted on in Macclesfield. I think it's gonna happen. We have professionals doing it. It'd be a great plan, hopefully. And then once the plan is developed by a smaller group, the public gets to vet the plan afterwards, so the public can chime in as to what they think of the plan and where it could or couldn't go, which is the public's right, since it's their tax dollars that are, addressing it. And then, and only then, is it responsible to consider other things outside of that plan that's going, because that feeds into the decision-making process moving forward with other aspects. And not for nothing, I do have a bit of concern with, I know this is strongly promoted by the Park and Rec Board, but I also know that there are Park and Rec Board members going on social media and just saying, build the fields. They're needed, build the fields now. And that's really frustrating, because these are all volunteers. They work very hard. I respect that, but they hurt themselves when they go to Park and Rec Board meetings and say yes to everything because they don't say no to too much. And then they go on social media and say, build the fields. And we get all these people here tonight very upset because we have Park and Rec Board members just saying that with no data, no plan that we're paying for, because we're trying to do it the right way. And it short circuits the whole process that we're trying to get done, so that people, whether they agree or disagree with the ultimate outcome, at least they can see into the process. They can have a say in the process. They can impact the process and the outcomes to some extent. And it's when we do that, I'll use an example. Supervisor Lewis was not in favor of the preserve project, right? He voted no. But we had a process that he got his 2 cents in there, and it made that project better because he was able to be critical of it during the planning process. And as someone who is ultimately in favor of the project, I actually agreed with a lot of the comments he made, and I think it made the project better in the long run. And I think more people are able to digest that, even if they don't agree with the concept. At least they can say, okay, they went through the process. Our concerns were heard. They're trying to mitigate them. I think Supervisor Weiss did a great job in that process, pushing really hard on the traffic issues. 'Cause that was a big concern for everyone, but we put it through that process. And I think we came out pretty well. So I'm concerned with this at Snipes being another big deal project that people have very strong feelings about in both directions, that we give it the opportunity to succeed in some way by going through a clear process that people can get involved in, myself included.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, Dan, and I don't disagree. However, I come from a different angle on this, in that public engagement from the beginning is critical to success. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. While the vendors the contractors are working on the master plan at Makefield, we can, on a parallel track, if we so desire, have public engagement workshops to gel the community's ideas on what Snipes may be. Once the data points start coming in, just like any other kind of workshop, there's no decisions going to come out of this until all the information is at our hands. And make no mistake, the Board of Supervisors will make the final decision based upon all the data we get. I would prefer that healthy public participation through this whole process would be desired by the board. Sometimes there is chaos in the beginning. It's okay. The fact is that the five of us, as time goes on, as we get the information we need, including the public participation, I hope there's very healthy and vibrant public participation in this process, because it's going to affect a lot of land. It's going to affect a lot of money. And the results, if any, will last for decades. So, in this situation, to be, the more information that we get from the public as the process goes forward is, for me, is to be desirable. And I don't see why being not asking for public input, even at this early stage, would not be desired. It's something that I don't understand. Right now, there is no data. Monica says in January we will get data. Once that data is in, we will engage, to engage the public for initial thoughts. I don't think it would hurt the process at all. I don't think it would confuse anybody. I think our residents are very knowledgeable, especially on this, because we've been talking about it for, I guess, 10 years now. I don't see a negative in allowing for public participation at this early date. That's my thought on it. So I mean, it's I have no dog, however the result about this is. My kids are long gone. My grandkids are almost all grown at this point. So I think listening to the public during this process would be a great thing.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. I assume that there is residents here that also would like to make a statement. So if you would just come up to the one at a time, come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. I just briefly, if you respectfully could just keep it brief. There's a lot of residents and we don't want to be here all night. So
Of course.
Thank you.
My name's Bill Gabota. I live at 1230 Ash Lane in the township.
correct.
And I'm delighted you contracted with or are working with Natural Lands. They are an excellent, excellent outfit. Well done. Are they going to assess the trees and woodlands along with their habitat assessment? Because one of the things I looked at is that one of the Saldo regulations, 200-51.b, reads in part, 70% of all woodlands remain undisturbed. So before you can even really start the plan, you have to know which are the mature trees, where are the woodlands. And we need to do that before you can even start penciling in plans, because if you look at it and it's all forest, you're kind of done. But I say, let's wait for that and a woodlands assessment, and then we move on from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard May. I live at 1270 Creamery Road, which is on the corner of Creamery and Quarry Road, directly across the street from the area that this construction is going to be, if it ever happens. One of the things I'm concerned about, well, first of all, we were looking at the possibility of hiring a consultant, which you've apparently done. And the indication was to look at Makefield. And your initial, off the top of your head, indication was that it would cost about $90,000 for them to do that. Have you come up with a number other than that?
No, it was what, around 80, it was 88?
86 something? Yes.
You said 90
Is what
at
we-
the meeting.
That's what we were estimating.
Estimate, yeah, okay.
So
So,
they were under.
so I already got a lot of skin in the game here. The other thought that crosses my mind is the indication was that this project would cost about $10 million. Now, that was before we got into the Ukrainian war, what we're going to run into in terms of inflation, cost of gasoline going like crazy. Bottom line is everything is more expensive. And usually products like this tend to be overrun. I think something that's going to cost the township something like 10 million or more is something that ought to come up to a vote in the voting booth. That's a lot of money to be spending for this township, especially in these times. So
Thank you.
I think that's the kind of thing we ought to do. It'd be nice when you get your facts and everything else like that, that we can lay it all out for the voters of the township. But I think that that's one of the things that needs to happen. So that everybody can start to see that if we spend 10 million or 15 million, or whatever it's really going to cost, everybody's taxes are going to go up. At a time when they can barely afford the taxes that we're having to pay right now. Secondly, the field area has gotten a bit smaller than the last time this was being considered because Pennsylvania American Water put in a facility across the street from my house, which is part of the space that was originally considered this thing to be done. So it's shrinking. There were also, and I'll call them variances, you can call them whatever else there were, but at the time that we were looking to build this back in 2017, there were 16 items like the traffic study, like the environmental issues, like the possibility of flooding, like the loss of habitat for the animals that are actually in that park, including a bald eagle, the deer that are in there, and that sort of thing. And we were going to just sort of like wave a magic wand and get rid of those 16 areas of concern.
Can you bring the microphone closer a little bit? They're having trouble
Sure.
hearing you out in the audience.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in any event, we were going to also eliminate all those 16 areas of concern. Frankly, I don't know whether these folks are aware of those issues, your consultants, because they ought to be, because if there is a law that restricts them from being able to do something that we recommend, then that obviously impacts on this whole thing. The other thing I'm a little concerned about is all of a sudden we find, as three of you have brought out, that pops on here, and the way this reads, consideration to proceed with the public process for Snipes Track, as if we'd all decided this was something that was going to happen. And I frankly resent you're trying to jam this down our throat. You're trying to blow through. It's almost like all that money that we got from the sewer thing is yours to spend on Parks and Rec, because you're burning through it. I mean, you got approved to spend $1.1 million on something else, $450,000 for those fields. We had an issue here earlier where we got a grant for 10 grand. We're going to match it with 10 grand more, but that wasn't good enough. Let's throw another 20 grand at it. That pretty much devalues that $10,000 grant that we're getting, doesn't it? So I think we got to slow down on this. The other thing is, of course, as it's been pointed out, the number of people that are of an age to be able to play soccer in this township has declined. And we probably have all the fields. I have grandkids that play at Macclesfield on soccer. I'm all for having soccer. I used to play it when I was a kid myself. But there are like 30 fields down there. And it seems like there's always a lot of fields that are open whenever I go down there to watch my grandkids. So I'm finding it hard to believe that we need a couple more and spend all this kind of money to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Just a couple clarifications.
Pardon me?
The voters did vote on how money is going to be spent at the township level. The 5 sitting supervisors on this board received the highest votes in the history of Lower Makefield Township. So you're covered, right? So the 5 of us, we're going to make sure that we're doing our due diligence with any finance. Also, I invite you to stick around. I don't know if you looked at the agenda. We're going to be looking at considering a trustee for the sewer proceeds in this meeting.
Mhm.
So we're not blowing all the money on parks and recs. A big percentage of that is going to be going into a trust.
That money, I mean, if you're putting it in trust, if you're putting that money in trust, is it going to be spent to do something to lower the cost of sewer bills?
That hasn't
Because our
been
sewer
decided
bills
yet.
have tripled.
Yeah, that hasn't been decided yet.
Well,
Oh, wait, first.
let me offer that up for
Mr. Chair.
consideration.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, may I respond to
Absolutely.
Mr. May's comments? There hasn't been a sewer increase in this township in 3 years. There will not be a sewer raise for at least another 3 years. The indicative rates that Aqua gave us before we made the decision to sell the cells shows that in the next 10 years, rate increases would be 20% to 30% less than if we not, if we did not sell the sewers. So let's put to rest this misinformation about sewer rates. Yes, there is a problem with second meters, irrigation systems, and swimming pools that is being dealt with on a separate level because Aqua kind of didn't hold up their end of the bargain. But that has nothing to do with general sewer rates in this township. Sewer rates in this township have been stable since 2019 and will be stable until 2024. Indicative, and I will repeat, indicative rates for sewers will not go up as high as if we didn't sell the sewers. That's a fact. So let's not talk about
Well, I get
No,
monthly bills right now. that are
your
the same as
monthly
my
bills-
quarterly bill.
your bills go by the month now instead of the quarter. They are the exact same rate that they were in 2019. There is no difference except for those few people that have second meters and have now have to pay for sewage that they shouldn't be paying. And
Back to you on that.
we all understand that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. Is there any other public comment?
We do have one public comment online.
Sure, if you could bring them in.
I'm bringing Barry into the room now.
Thank you.
Barry's in the room with us now.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Barry, it's *6 to unmute.
Good evening, Monica. Good evening, Supervisors. Barry Dritz, 1451 Heather Circle.
Good evening.
Can you hear me, Supervisors?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I want to echo some of the comments that the supervisors made. The summary being that it's premature. It's going to be 6 months until we have the Macclesfield plan, and it'll be 6 months until we have a full report from National Lands Trust. If we start public discussion now, we're going to have a war between the people that want to build more fields, even though our population usage of the fields is declining, and even though we've discussed looking at the usage of the school fields, versus the people who live near the property and whose signs have been stolen because they oppose the building. If we wait until we have a plan for the Macclesfield area and a plan that shows what can be done at Snipes, then we'll have a logical foundation to discuss what could be done at Snipes. If we try talking about it now, we're just going to be arguing about what I want and what they want without any data to base that on. And I feel it's wrong. And as was stated, it makes it appear that we're going forward with a de facto intention to build fields where residents don't want them, don't want the noise, don't want the lights, and don't want to pay for it.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
comment.
Mr. Chair, I move that we table this item to a future date.
Second.
Generally, there's no discussion of a motion at the table, so just go straight to the vote.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Table motion is denied. Any other public comment regarding this? Anybody else on the line?
There's no other public comment online.
Monica, just for clarification for the board, you're going to have at least 2/3 of major data points to talk with these during these public workshops. That being the biological piece of it
Yes.
and the
Yes, and
and
if
the-
we don't, we'd have to change the date. I mean.
and the
we won't
rough
have that
data
information.
from the Makefield study, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we able to ensure that the data is not tainted by certain folks showing up extra strong on nights where they know that they're going to be observed, and, you know, see what the membership is on the steering committee to make sure that it's actually balanced and it's not totally league driven?
But it was normal flow Wednesday and Saturday. I mean,
Do we know if there are any emails sent out saying, hey, we're going to be observed and
well.
Can we call the
I
question?
can't-
leagues and all that? Because that
Call
actually
the
happens.
question.
I can't guarantee that.
Actually happens.
I call the
Yeah,
question.
You just have to be careful about that. You-
Sure.
You know,
I hear what you're
be
saying.
aware. Not going to help anyone.
Yeah, I'm kind of frustrated that we're not getting.
I call the
uh,
question.
All right.
I have a concern when people say that because they want to hinder debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, I understand
Oh.
that both you guys have concerns about it. You both tried tabling it, and now you still have more concerns. I think it is absolutely time to call to question. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, moving along. Back to you, Chief. I think Monica is off the hot seat. 10B.
All right, B is consider award of leaf collection contractors. Derek Fuller of Public Works is recommending the approval of Corcoran Landscaping at $184 an hour, Ken's Lawn Service at $179 an hour, and Marazzo's Manor Lane at $190 an hour. These are the same contractors coming back that worked with us last year.
Do I hear a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Grenier, seconded by Supervisor Lewis. Any discussion?
Sure. I'd first like to thank Derek for his work. We got detailed analysis, including bidding terms,
Yes.
enough for us to make a decision. It was comprehensive, and I thank him for that.
Very good. I will let him know that. The other one on the agenda is.
I think we got to vote on this.
Oh, yeah, we haven't. Any other supervisor comments regarding leaf collection? Any public comment regarding leaf collection? Yes, sir.
Remind People, when it comes to this season, when we have the leaves Andy will love this. Just be very careful when you put your leaves out, not put them in the storm sewer. We have a lot of very expensive damage that can occur when the leaves go into the storm sewer. Leaves are not supposed to go out on the road. They're supposed to go to the curb, and then they can vacuum it up. Doesn't have to be on the road for them to vacuum it, and it does a great job, and it keeps the leaves out of the storm sewers, which can lead to hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage that we all have to pay for as taxpayers to stormwater infrastructure. So
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Any other comments? I got to take a vote first. Anybody on the line? I don't think anybody's calling about leaf collection. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carries 5-0. And then finally,
James,
yes,
James.
ma'am.
I didn't know if Monica left the room yet, and if she didn't, I just wanted to say great job in getting those trees planted around Kids Kingdom today. I'm sorry that I didn't think to say it while she was here, but Monica and her team continues to get trees planted using the money in the tree bank, and I really want to thank her and the team for getting that done.
Thank you. She did leave, but I echo the sentiment. 10C, Chief?
Yeah, this is the 2022 and 2023 snow plowing contract proposal recommendations, and they are for Corcoran Landscaping, Green Grass Landscaping Services, Marazzo's Manor Lane, and Influent Retrieval. These again are as needed contractors during the snow renewal process.
Do I hear a motion?
Moved. Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Grenier, seconded by Supervisor Weiss. And just to reiterate on that point, essentially the township does have its own snow plows. However, if there's overage and we need coverage in areas that we can't cover, if it's a big event, these are some of the guys that we'll lean on. Excellent. Any other comments by supervisors? Any public comment? Call to question. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Truelove, take it away.
Yes, first on the solicitor's report, there were two executive sessions to report about. The first was on October 6th, lasted from 6:30 to approximately 7:15 PM. All members of the board were present, along with the chief and members of two financial services companies making proposals and discussions. And issues regarding confidential matters and informational items were discussed at that executive session. Tonight, there was an executive session that occurred between 6 PM and right before this meeting started. All board members were present, along with the chief and myself. Collective bargaining, litigation, real estate items, and informational items were discussed. Oh, and Mr. Ferguson, the former manager, was here as well to discuss some items related to the items I just mentioned. The first item specifically under my report is consider authorization to advertise, and I emphasize advertise, an amendment to the zoning ordinance for an open space requirement in residential zoning districts. Now, this is not to enact the ordinance. So I just want to caution everybody if there's a concern about that, or if people don't feel like they have enough information. The board for some time has considered the possibility of what's called cluster ordinances, which essentially is to require an open space set aside. I'm using that phrase. It's not a zoning or a land development term, but that's I think conceptually what we're talking about for all residential zoning districts. When Barbara Kirk in my office first started working on this with Jim Majewski, it was thought that we probably would do so by way of an overlay ordinance. And then as Jim got more into the process, it looked like it was more, I guess, effectively performed by way of changing the performance standards under the ordinance. And again, this is a draft for advertising only. Would have to go through the MPC process to be vetted by our planning commission, the EAC, and of course, the Bucks County Planning Commission. Both Mr. Majewski and Barbara Kirk from my office are available for any questions, or discussions at this time. Again, I just emphasize this to advertise the ordinance. It could go through many changes or some changes anyway, depending on the comments that we receive back. So first, we would need a motion to consider advertising an amendment to the zoning ordinance for open space requirements in residential zoning districts as described, and then you could have that discussion.
Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blundy. Any discussion or any questions for Mr. Truelove, Ms. Kirk, or Mr. Majewski? It just popped up on our screen. Sure, Dan.
I mean, generally, in reviewing this, generally, I think it's a pretty good idea. Do we have we had the EAC comments incorporated? Have they reviewed it?
Not yet. I mean, they will have a chance to officially weigh in on that too. I mean, certainly all that will be included in part of the process going forward.
So have any of our advisory boards?
No, and they will. Again, I emphasize they will have that opportunity going forward.
I'm a little frustrated that we're looking at this for the first time, looking to advertise day one. Again, use the word process too much. Strong preference would be to allow our EAC and planning commission to look at it ahead of time. So that
If I can interrupt Mr. Grenier for a minute. what you're looking at is a revision to what was originally presented as a cluster overlay. The process normally starts if the Board of Supervisors are interested in enacting amendments to an ordinance. Usually a draft version is prepared by the administration for the supervisors. And once the resolution or approval for advertisement, then the draft goes to Planning Commission and for Bucks County and the other advisory boards of the township. So you're actually starting in the appropriate method in order to get this reviewed. When those comments come back, and if the board wishes to implement or accept any of the recommendations, then the ordinance gets revised and it then goes back for additional review so that everything is appropriately vetted through all of the advisory boards and commissions before a formal hearing is held by the Board of Supervisors.
So how many ordinances have we revised in the last few years that we didn't advertise first? Most of them, where we had the EAC, the Planning Commission, whoever else would apply, you know, sorry for the feedback, tree ordinances and native plant ordinances and everything else. We had our EAC review. We had our planning, well, we didn't have our Planning Commission review a few of them, which ahead of time, and then we have to spend money to advertise. You know, every time we advertise, we have to spend money. So I would prefer to allow this, our very solid volunteers to save us some money and make sure that what we're advertising at day one is something that they can get behind, or at least be comfortable advising on, so that we start in a good position. And then when we get to the next, and maybe make the tweaks ahead of time, so that when we get through the process, it'll be smoother, and we can get everyone to recommend approval across the board, and it can come across with flying colors, and we'll have a great ordinance. I think getting it now and advertising now before any of that's done, I'm just uncomfortable doing it myself, because honestly, we haven't had a whole lot of time to review it either. So this is something I'd like to send to our EAC and the Planning Commission, anyone else that we think would provide some benefit in its review.
Any other supervisor comments? Any public comment? Do you want to?
Well, the other thing is, this is if you do this, it's a pending ordinance, so somebody can't come in and say, I don't like this ordinance, I'm not going to do something else, just a thought. And this is the normal.
Is Dave's mic on? I just want to make sure people can hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, Supervisor Lewis and I were having a sidebar. One of the issues could be some concerns as to whether some developers might try to come in and not have to comply with this. However, doing it this way at least gets a pending ordinance, gets that before. So if you approve it tonight for advertisement, it becomes a pending ordinance, which would then make it so that anybody would have to comply with the eventual final version of it. And to your point, and I certainly agree that all these different committees have to look at this. And for the most part, any amendment or any ordinance that has to go through the MPC process does go through this. Now, in some cases, I'll certainly admit, for example, you mentioned the native plant ordinances. That was a wholesale change to a large part of the ordinance and I'm not saying this is somewhat different, but that was injecting an entirely new idea, as were the steep slopes and all that kind of stuff. So there was certainly more of a organic process from the beginning. This, at least in terms, and I'll let Jim and Barbara weigh in this as well, is significant, but it doesn't have a wholesale change or addition to the ordinances. And to your point, these different committees will look at it. And if they have comments that require substantive changes, as Barbara said, it'll have to be re-advertised. So this is the beginning of the beginning, so to speak. And I understand what you're saying, but generally speaking, this is exactly the way the MPC and our ordinances prescribe. But I'll let Jim and or Barbara talk about that. I mean, there's been no there's certainly no desire to bypass anybody in this process that I know of.
Any other comments? Any public comment? I believe somebody did make the motion.
Yeah, it was Supervisor.
Supervisor Weiss made the motion. It was seconded by Supervisor
Right, yeah.
Lundy. Okay, so I'm going to call to question. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1.
Do we need to direct anybody to make sure that the EAC planning and whomever else gets a chance to weigh in, or does Jim just do that? His part of what he does.
So generally, I will take the revisions that you have in red line form, create it into a clean document, submit it to Mr. Majewski, and he himself normally submits it up to Bucks County Planning Commission, puts it on the agenda for the Township's Planning Commission, and I will make sure that the EAC, which is probably the only other advisory board for the township, gets an opportunity to look at it as well.
And they
Thank you.
will both have that for their agendas at the beginning of November.
Thanks, Jim.
Well, you're Park and Rec liaison too, right?
Mhm.
This really is about getting open space, which is not a bad concept at all. That's not why I voted no. But open space for possible recreation, Park and Rec may have some good ideas too. So they'd
Some
be,
input on that. Okay.
Is it the request that this also go to Park and Recreation for review?
that's what I'm.
Correct, yes.
Okay,
And we could do that.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
All right, good night, everybody.
Moving down to solicitors, report number B.
Under B, yes. As was referenced earlier by one of the supervisors too, I think it was Mr. May. As the public knows, the sewer sale generated proceeds and north of $20 million. The board and the administration have worked diligently the past several months to devise a process whereby which, without deciding how much to set aside, so I want to emphasize that hasn't been decided yet. The best way to maximize whatever trust funds will be set aside for the purpose of benefiting the township, and who would be best to administer that process. We had outside counsel weigh in on that and helped to discuss the structure in terms of the trust and the investment policies that might be generated by this. The next step was, and again, that has been finalized, but the next step was then to include an advisory entity as far as the trust proceeds were concerned, investment strategy, things like that. Entities were interviewed recently, and I guess it's now appropriate, as I understand it, for the board to consider naming and approving an advisory entity for that purpose. So,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
again, there's been no final decisions made about how much, what it's going to be, what the funds are going to be dedicated towards at this point. I just want to emphasize that we're not there yet. So.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on that, we looked at a couple of different entities within Pennsylvania and then also, internationally. And we were looking for a partner that was also going to be a fiduciary on our behalf. So we did narrow it down to a couple of candidates. We interviewed them, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. February, September, October 6th. Yes, yeah, thanks.
I'm way ahead of myself. We're behind.
We had some follow-up questions, and, based on the answers that came back from those different entities, there's 2 candidates that are floating out there. I don't know if any of the supervisors are ready to make a motion on either one of them. If they are, this would be the time.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to engage PNC as the corporate trustee for the Lower Makefield Trust.
A second.
Motion made by Supervisor Weiss, seconded by Supervisor Blundy. Any discussion? Sure.
Do you want to go first?
I'm not offering an opinion. I just was wondering if we could kind of run down if it's appropriate to run down what their offer was or their statistics in terms of what they were proposing to do from an investment perspective, from a trust perspective, their fees, et cetera. So everyone knows what we're doing. and what
Sure.
they're offering.
Yeah, I ask whoever's going to elaborate on this, and it would probably be the maker of the motion to make sure that he omits any specific, corporates that we're actually going to be putting into the trust. You can talk about percentages instead of actual dollar amounts. That would be helpful.
Does it make sense? I mean, I don't know, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but does it make sense, assuming the motion is approved, then to invite the people back so that they could give a high-level presentation, and if there are questions,
Well,
have it this way too.
Yeah, what usually happens, once we engage the trustee, they're going to work with the township to, number one, solidify the trust documents, and then work with the township to state an investment policy how we invest the money. So, this is this would be the first step to engage, to engage the trustee. The reason why I would like to see them is their fees were the most reasonable net overall from the other finalists. So plus the fact that they have a large network, seem to be more socially engaged, and have a basket of investment instruments that will probably fit well with the township. So that was my reason for making the motion.
Any other feedback?
Yeah, first, can you tell me what the final revised fee structure was for PNC?
I think it was the last questionnaire when we got the answers, it was below 50 basis points.
We sure about that?
I think so. If you add, depending on the fee might go up a bit depending on the actual investments. If we use some funds, but I think we were under 50 basis points for the base fee.
And then the second participant, what was their fee structure?
They were 65 basis points plus a small additional fee. I think their overall was 72 basis points, if I remember correctly.
And what was the original PNC before they reduced their fees?
They were, I don't have the information right in front of me.
Did you not get any of the feedback that Pauline sent?
So I didn't get a statement that told me a final analysis of what the structure and costs were. So typically when we make decisions, right?
Hold on a second. Dr. Weiss, where are you quoting these numbers from then?
These are from the answers that we got back from Pauline.
Did you get those answers from Pauline?
I did, but I didn't get a spreadsheet that tells me which one's cheaper.
Dr. Weiss, how did you decipher those questions to figure out what those basis points were going to be?
When PNC came to when they answered, they revised their fees. I could be mistaken, but even so, their fee structure was slightly less than the other finalists. And they,
Can I provide additional context. So in this process, the special counsel in concert with supervisors selected 4 potential financial services companies. All of the financial services companies that were considered are insured depository institutions subject to federal regulation. They all met the standards and criteria. There was a questionnaire that the township sent to those 4 entities. All 4 came back with answers. Now, at that time, 2 of the supervisors who reviewed them wanted to only consider 2 of the companies. I had suggested that we consider a third because they're an existing pension provider and potentially there's economies of scale. I was rejected in that. So in that process, then we heard from 2 companies, both very good, with 2 different investment philosophies. And from there, there was some additional price discussion, but at no time did we receive a summary that says, this is what the expected cost would be, right? Under different scenarios, or did we receive revised estimates of rates of return? So both the providers that were considered the finalists, right? And again, since we'll just stay with the one that's been publicly mentioned, a very fine financial services company, by all means. But we never got a revised analysis that said, okay, here's the rates and here is what the indicative performance of the proposed investment strategy was. It's a large amount of money, and you're talking a lot, regardless of whatever the number is. Some restrictions in the process, what they can invest in and all those sorts of things. And we need to have an understanding of what the net cost is. One of the things that this board has done over the years is we have tried to reduce our investment management costs, particularly on the pension side. We've tried to move away from actively managed funds to more ETFs to lower our fee basis and still get reasonable rates of return. My question here, and this is why I'm having a hard time with this analysis, is typically somebody would say, this is the expected cost, right? And bank A is 40 or 20 or 10 basis points cheaper than bank B. And this is what their projected rates of returns with this portfolio are. So that you would have an assessment, oh, okay, I can make those too. I didn't find out who the intended bank was until it was mentioned, right? So I did not know, which is part of my frustration with this. Again, I'm open to voting in favor of that particular financial institution. Again, I think very highly of PNC. It's a wonderful financial services company, a tremendous Pennsylvania institution. However, I just wanted a comparison to make that call. Much in the same way that when we reviewed the leaf collection or the snow removal, we had the list of bids detailed and analysis and a staff recommendation. We don't have that here. So hence I'm a little flummoxed. If the people that were advising or recommending that particular company, again, wonderful financial services company, if they had said, this is the cost structure is, and this is why we're recommending them, and this is what the rates are, and they put that in the pre-work material, I'd be like, oh, okay, right? Much like, again, snow removal and leaf collection. I read through that Friday night and like, okay, this all makes sense. Boom. So that's,
I'm now confused because I sent an email to you on October 6th with PNC's presentation. It was a PDF format, and on page of 13 of 25, it specifically talks about their fees and charges.
right. Is there a final one that compares the two?
It was what their presentation is, right? So that's what. was
No,
on
they
their
came back with a
presentation.
lower rate later.
So you know that it was lower than what was on there.
Right.
Okay, so you
They don't
that's
know what the final rate is or a comparison.
So it's just it's argumentative.
Mr.
really.
Mr.
So-
Chair.
Not argumentative, it's process oriented.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
sure.
um,
And there was a
I
second
understand,
email.
I understand what Supervisor Lewis is saying.
Sure.
The problem here is that the Board of Supervisors' responsibility is to determine who the trustee is going to be. I made a motion to select PNC. I gave my reasons. We all have the same information. We all analyze it how we wish. If Mr. Lewis, had questions, he could have called any one of us with questions. He did not. So, and I'm happy to come over his house at bedtime and read him night stories on PNC's rates versus the other finalist rates, and we could do spreadsheets together and do that. But that wasn't done. There was no prior knowledge of his lack of understanding of the data. That's okay. I get it, and he can vote against PNC and make an alternate motion based on whatever he understands. It's all good, but the question is, to put to the public that somebody gets information, somebody else doesn't, that's a bald-faced lie. And I made my recommendation based on what I read, and I made a motion. It was seconded. He can put it down or put it up any way he wants. It's totally his right as a supervisor. But to mislead the public again on what is given to him and what is not, like I have some special information that nobody else has, is total baloney. And I'm insulted But that's okay. That's what Mr. Lewis does. And that's his, I guess, his assigned duty at the board to keep saying that he gets nothing and everybody else gets something. That's
So-
okay. That's fine.
If I can add to the conversation, if you don't mind, Dr. Weiss. Yeah, so the reason I was so willing to second the motion is in large part due to the experience that PNC has in this space, and it's a unique space. I mean, specifically what we're doing is pretty unique, but the idea of managing public entity funds is something the PNC has experience in and really unique to the vendors that we were able to identify. I'd also point out that while there were proposals given, the nature of the process going forward, obviously the trust has a fiduciary duty to the township, but there will be ongoing input by the supervisors. So what works for us today does not mean that it will work for the future boards in terms of the way funds are managed, and the flexibility exists within the choices that we're discussing. So I was impressed with the company. My own subsequent Googling finds that they are a good reputation in terms of customer service, and that's why I'm excited to have them be a part of this process for us, if that's the approval that comes tonight.
Thank you, Supervisor Blondie. Any other supervisor comments?
Or,
Yes.
do we, what's their names? We never got a formal so when we're not only looking at investments, right? We're looking at setting up a trust, then having investment options. There's two heads to this animal, right, Dr. Weiss? So we're voting on both.
I'm sorry, Dan. You're cutting in and out. I
I'm
can't hear
sorry,
you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So we're looking, we're interested in the fees for investment purposes. Anyone has a 401k, you understand that. If you have a financial advisor, you understand that, right? That's part of it. We also have a trust and a fiduciary. So we're setting up legal documents where we'll be able to do certain things through that fiduciary, through the trust. So we're looking at both of those items. As such, we hired, well, our solicitor as well as an outside law firm, both work together. I'm not sure what work together in some way, shape or form. I think that's fair to say. To help review some of these review the proposals, facilitate questions, some other things. But we didn't, correct me if I misspeak, please. I don't believe that we got a formal recommendation from outside counsel.
No.
Okay. I would have, you didn't say, okay.
No.
Personally, I would have appreciated one prior to this, if they were willing to do so prior to the meeting, just so we could understand why they were making that recommendation. And I would have listened. Because I think that's very helpful for me personally, not an attorney. So a lot of this paperwork is a lot of legalese. You want to make sure you understand what we're getting ourselves into. From so that part of it, I'm still not totally comfortable with personally. I understand we have attorneys on the board and with us that probably know this better than I do, and I appreciate that. The other side of it, from an investment perspective, I think there's probably less risk with the approach that PNC uses generally, because it's a less managed approach without getting into super details. Some other entities did not use that approach. And for me personally, as I'm doing any personal investment, I don't like a lot of risk. It's just the way I am. And I don't like managed approaches, generally speaking. You pay more for something that has more risk to it, and often you don't beat the market, and you should have stuck with the market to begin with. So I'm not, I think it's probably going to come to a vote tonight. I'm not sure that I have a final say, because I am also, and not to get into too much detail, but I am also concerned about, as we set up the trust, that make sure we're doing enough with the trust in terms of we're putting enough money in it. If we're going through all of this, spending some money to hire some expensive law firms to help us, we are looking to invest for the future. It's all good stuff, but we want to make sure, tonight there's been other stuff on the agenda that you know, we have what, $25 million that we are looking to do something with. There's been discussions about how much. We heard tonight that a special project might cost 10 million or more. And we've heard previous
We heard
discussions of,
that from a resident. Let's not keep quoting it. I mean, I'm with you, Dan. I'm
Look-
following you and I'm understanding your points, but then when we keep, you know, the fake news stuff, we can't be a part of it.
I'm not, the $10 million is not fake news. We've had discussions about how much a sports complex at Snipes would cost many, many times.
Actually,
Previous-
the $10 million is for both Macclesfield and Snipes.
Yeah. I mean, come
So let's,
Well,
but
So-
I understand your point.
you know, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, good point.
Well,
Good points.
okay, so then what's the phrase, John, that you always use? I reclaim my time.
Yes,
Okay.
reclaiming my
But
time.
whatever
that's not.
whatever
the
you
thing.
always say.
You would claim it too, but it's not a thing.
He can reclaim
It
it.
is. But any, I don't want to get off track. It's okay. Let's
Yeah,
just
let's
keep
not get
moving,
off
please.
track.
So,
I want to finish.
sure, absolutely.
So I want to make sure that the trust is actual trust. We're not putting only $10 million in and we're spending $15 million on nice to have projects and other stuff where personal opinion, that's where we start to lessen the importance of the trust long-term to the township. And there may be other options we should look at if we're not going to actually protect a large portion of that principal long-term. So that's my main concern with the trust. I would have liked to have an opinion from the attorneys that we hired, just to make sure it's vetted completely. I think, Dr. Weiss, from a fee perspective, I do think PNC's approach from an investment perspective, something I appreciate more than the other approaches, and their fees are lower. So all that is great. I'm just not yet comfortable with the trust itself and how it's
Well,
being set up, because we
and-
haven't gotten that feedback.
And if I may, Dan, you shouldn't be comfortable with the trust because we don't have a trust right now. So the first step would be after the trustee is engaged, that they will work with the township and with our attorneys to solidify the trust documents that we can all agree to and be comfortable with. And once that's done, we can transfer the money into the trust. That would be the final step. We agree to an amount. We already agreed that we would start with $10 million. That's not a ceiling, that's a floor. So when we get an idea of what the township needs, the rest will go into that trust to benefit the taxpayers. We've already agreed to that.
Yeah.
But how the details of all that, that's the future. The motion on the table is just to engage the trustee to help us solidify the next steps.
Yeah.
And we will have, that has no cost. That's a service that the trustee will give us.
Yeah. Can I ask you one more question about their particular proposal? Because I know you know this. So
Yeah.
I'm using you as my data source, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And if you don't know, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
That's right.
There was one issue between the two of them, and I'm mixing up in my head, where say we took a loan out against the trust, or we had some other features that one of the groups covered, basically is included in the cost. Another one said they didn't offer that, and we'd have to go outside and get an outside.
I believe that was a basic amortization schedule.
That all,
Correct.
It
Yeah.
was just an amortization schedule.
that was all it
Yeah.
was?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all it was. Yeah.
That's all. it was,
Something
which
that can
is-
be calculated.
Which
by
we can do
math.
in-house.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Great
We can do that
.com.
in-house.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm okay moving forward with PNC. I'll say that.
Okay,
I
any
mean,
public comment
Yeah, I
regarding
got
this?
some more. I'm not done. So on this, you're saying that PNC's new rate is 57 basis points? No. Is it 57?
If I.
I would recommend that Supervisor Lewis just go back and read the presentations again that were emailed to him and then solidify what he thinks the basis points based on the presentations that I
I
sent.
wouldn't have asked the question if I didn't look at the email.
So you know what it is?
Yes.
Okay, well then why don't you
And that-
state it for the record?
Pardon?
Well, I mean, it's
I'm
just,
reclaiming my
it's at this
time.
point. But John, at this point, it's counterproductive to ask him what it is if you know what the answer is. What are you trying to
Question-
prove?
The difference is 3 basis points between the two, but I don't know what the fixed fees are per year. you're talking 3 basis points. PNC was originally much higher and they came down in price, which is wonderful, right? Other providers could have done the same and we could have gotten a better deal possibly, but
So you don't like the
They
deal?
were given the option.
no,
Yeah.
huh? No, RBC was never given the option.
I know you're a big fan of having people take a second bite of the apple actually after they put their initial bid in. That's fine. In this case, it doesn't apply.
No, in this case, it worked,
Okay.
right?
So we're-
PNC came down 22%.
We're done discussing it as
Hold on,
supervisors. No,
hold on.
I'm not
I
really
asked
interested.
for what the fixed fees were.
If you know what they are, John.
I
you-
don't know.
it-
Sure.
If you'd have to come up and state your name and address for the record, please. Yeah, it's like,
Scary. I've been a certified public accountant for 25 years, when I sold my company, and the only one who guys make any sense at all.
We can't hear the president.
You need to turn on your microphone, sir.
your mic, yeah, your microphone's not on, so we can't necessarily hear you. Yeah,
My brother can help.
there you go.
The only one who's making any financial sense is this guy over here, Lewis. Seriously, you should listen to him. Maybe make a little shorter conversation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for the point.
Thank you.
Any other public comment regarding this? Okay. I completely don't disagree with you at this point. So I'm going to call a question. All those in favor of engaging PNC as the trustee for the Lower Makefield Township Trust, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, what the hell?
All those opposed, look at each other and see what each other vote. All right, so it carries 5-0. Moving along, zoning hearing board.
Yes, quickly. There are 2 matters. The first one, appeal number 22-1980, Hydroscape / Mark Waldman is appealing for the property located at 848 Dutchess Drive, tax parcel 20-039-218. Applicant is requesting a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23 B in order to construct an in-ground fiberglass pool with concrete decking, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 22.4% to 24.1%, where 80% is allowed. Mr. Waldman and Mrs. Waldman, I believe, are also proposing some stormwater mitigation matters based upon the experience of this board and the zoning hearing board. We recommend deferral, therefore no vote would be required unless, of course, there's a contrary sentiment here. Hearing none. The second one, appeal number 22-1981, Frank Matee is appealing for the property located at 1279 Fountain Road, Newtown, Pennsylvania, still in Lower Makefield, tax parcel 20-004-165. Mr. Matee is requesting a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-69A 14 small c in order to construct a wood or PVC post and rail fence in a floodplain easement. Again, it's post and rail, which means it's not a solid fence. Given the circumstances and the prior experiences, both of this board and the zoning hearing board, in these circumstances, we recommend deferral. If there's, unless there's a contrary sentiment. Hearing none, both matters will be deferred to the zoning hearing board, and that is all I have tonight. Thank you.
Can I ask the solicitor a quick question? And I'm not trying to reopen anything. I just want to make sure on the last vote that we did on the trust. Was that, did we advertise that in time to get into the public notice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
All I
there was
wanted
a
to-
question that was raised yesterday.
Yeah.
I had a conversation at approximately 1 o'clock yesterday about that. It's 24 hours. It's required under Act 65, was my understanding. It was placed on the website and advertised before 7:30 yesterday. Yeah, yes.
I saw it on the email. I don't want to have to. Go
Right.
through that conversation.
Yep, no, and that was actually asked that. The chief and I had a conversation early in the afternoon yesterday exactly about that issue. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Truelove.
You're welcome.
Agenda item number 13, community development. Is anybody speaking on community development? I don't believe so. Okay. We will scratch that from the agenda. Agenda item number 14, general public comment. Does anybody have general public comment? Please step up to the microphone. State your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Jerry Wall. I live at 3 Griffin Way in Yardley Woods. You may remember I was here last month. I'm the president of the HOA. I'm joined by several of our residents. I sent an email out to all you following up on the 12th Dr. Weiss was kind enough to respond. I appreciate that. But I'm here to find out, Mr. Majeski called me this morning. Before that, I had waited 10 days without any information. And to date, nobody's told me what the township is having the developer do, what the developer has done, what's being done to verify it's done correctly, what isn't done. Here we are a month later and I have no idea. So I don't know. I know you guys all offered and your intent is to help us, but we don't want to keep coming back here. And, you know, we just want the project finished the way it should have been before it was signed off on. We went over that last month. Should have been signed off, shouldn't have been signed off on. Still want the punch list done that was given. There's several areas that the lawns were not reseeded the way they were supposed to be done last year. Our landscaper's telling me now it's too late in the year to be planting grass. So here we are, we're gonna go into the spring, which isn't the best time to be planting grass. This is like a never ending thing. And we're hoping you guys can help us out to the extent of forcing the developer to do what he should have done last year.
I don't know if Mr. Majewski is still on. He is? Or Andy, do you have any, I think that you had some background on this last time these folks were here.
I have some background, yes. So the developer, Mr. Majewski, reached out to the developer. They engaged with a landscape company, Pickering Valley Landscaping. They planted in excess of, I believe it was 24 trees. Trees that were missing or that were dead or missing from the approved landscape plan. Then there was conversations, there's bare areas of grass that are being reseeded or overseeded. And I believe that's going to happen shortly. Within, Mr. Majewski's handling that and in contact with the developer. But as I understand it, we are meeting with them to go over the areas that are bare that need to be planted.
Do you have a timeline on that?
I would say within the next week.
Okay.
Mr. Majewski reached out to me this morning, as I said, obviously in anticipation of today's meeting. And I told him I would meet him on Friday. I don't know if that's the same meeting you're talking about. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. I believe that's the same meeting, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we agreed we would meet on Friday, but do you know what they've done so far?
It was planting of trees that were not, that were either dead or missing.
Yeah, well, if you saw the pictures that I sent you all, when I emailed you, you'll still see there's trees missing. So I don't know what, again,
When did these plantings take place?
Within the past 2 weeks.
When are your photos
weeks.
from?
They were out on the 3rd. They were out on the 3rd and the 4th, I believe.
October.
And then they're gone. And I kept asking, are they done? What are they doing? Because these people are asking me. And I said, at this point, I have no idea what they're doing. Because nobody's relaying that to me.
The only thing that I would say is we were going on the approved landscape plan. And so if there were additional trees that were planted in excess of what is on the approved landscape plan, that's what we're holding them to.
So if I may ask,
Yeah.
Are they still, this development, the developer, do we still have money in escrow from them?
No.
Or have we've released everything?
Yes, these were trees that were planted originally. The number was correct, and that's when we closed out the development
How long ago was that?
over a year ago.
It was in the spring. It was in the spring. The money was released. The final money was released in the spring.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the timeline here. So
Yeah.
in the spring, they did their spring plantings essentially.
No,
Landscape plan, or
No.
supposedly.
they released the money.
So there's a landscape plan that was approved,
Correct.
the whole process.
Yes.
part of the landscape plan, there's certain number, type, size of trees, spacing, all that stuff, locations. And according to inspection, at some point, somebody had to inspect it and say, yes, it was completed per the plans, the approved plans.
Correct.
And that was completed by one of your folks, I assume?
Yes.
At that point, that's when they tell you, you come back to us, among other things, and you say, looks like the plans, the approved plans, so you guys can go release money.
Yes, we certify that everything was constructed in accordance with the approved plan.
So since then, obviously, it sounds like it's a rather bare location based on your description and your photos. Have you or Mr. Majewski or someone on staff has done further inspections to look into this or no?
Yes, when they came out on October 3rd and 4th, we were there observing them installing the trees.
So here's so they completed, I don't know, supposedly, if that's the right word, I'm not trying to point the finger at you or anything, Andy. But supposedly they completed everything in the spring based on the plan that your inspectors approved. But now they're coming back a few weeks ago to plant replant tree. Why were they out there on the 3rd planting trees? Were some removed? Were they destroyed? Did they die? What do we got?
All of the above. Either they died or they were removed. They were not.
So when you do an inspection, the developers are on the hook, keep those trees there, for various reasons. And obviously you're de facto, because you live there, you're basically doing inspections for us. It's in your backyard. You're going to see it and that's what we hope you do, because we only have so many people on staff. So they contact the township, Mr. Majewski, it sounds like. You look into it, they'll look and say, yep. Did we ever have someone go back and do a comparison to how it was before October 3rd, whatever the day was that they were back out there? See, hey, you're missing, I'm making up a number, but you're missing 15, 20 trees, and here's what they are.
No, we had a plan of where they were going to plant the trees and a count of the number of trees, and we observed them install on October 3rd and 4th.
Okay. Did they ever tell you why they needed to? Yeah, did they say why some of the trees were removed?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Are they under warranty? I assume it doesn't matter.
Well, right. I mean, our role in this process is that the HOA is responsible for the maintenance of the landscaping after it has been turned over from the developer. So we are assisting the HOA in facilitating the work getting done by the developer.
And it hasn't been turned over yet.
Oh, yeah.
When was it turned over to the HOA?
The HOA took over responsibility from the developer, I believe, in September of last year.
Okay.
Okay, but the developer finished the project in November. There was, to reiterate what we went over last month, there was a punch list done on 11/16. And that punch list said topsoil seed, all areas washed out. Well, it was already November 16th. So you agreed with me, nothing was going to grow that was planted after the punch list was done. They never returned until we sent letters to their attorney and I came here. Then they came back because they told us we're done. And the reason they said they were done was because the township said they were done. I have one other question. Do you know, did they redo catch basins when they were out a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
Define catch basins. Some people define it as storm inlets, some people.
Well, the storm inlets in the back of the units that would catch the water.
So did they redo them?
Because I wasn't there again, like you guys, I have a day job.
I mean, are you asking a year ago or?
No,
October 3rd?
in October 3rd, did they adjust any of the basins that you're aware of or no?
My knowledge, no.
Okay, all right, because I don't know that they did. Somebody told me they did, and there are a couple that they They seeded everything right where the basin was. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But that's the problem. I asked for the as-built because people were saying they have trouble with drainage. I haven't received that yet. You know, I shouldn't have to go for an Freedom of Information Act for that. I mean, just give me the damn thing so that we can verify. And we have no idea what they came back and redid because there's no communication. The developer surely isn't going to help us because they tried to get out of it with their lawyer and do nothing. We don't want you to, we're responsible for when it's done. But according to your punch list, it was never done, regardless of whether you released their money or not. It was never done. So it's on you, in my opinion, to make sure it was done correctly. Our arborist report said the trees weren't planted correctly, that they're not bald, you know, they didn't release the balls on the bottom so that they're, you know, that's why we're having issues. Well, we have a lot more trees that they didn't die yet. What are we supposed to do with those that weren't put in correct? I don't know what extent your responsibility is for the landscaping. I know you have to make sure it's all there, but I also know you had to make sure all the grass was established. And the pictures I sent you showed that it's still not. So I don't know how we're going to correct this because again, their money was released in March without any input from the HOA. So you really don't have any leverage here.
Dave, what's our recourse legally?
Off the top of my head, I'd have to look at all the timeline of information and everything before I could give you that answer.
Did they get a notice of termination from the county conservation?
They got a sign off from the county conservation district, but because of the fact that it is part of the matrix development, it was not a notice of termination. It was a transfer of ownership.
So the conservation district did their inspection, said from their perspective, and they review, conservation district reviews it, many things, but one of the things they review is to make sure that vegetation is established for erosion purposes only, not for landscaping or any of that.
Correct.
But
They signed off on it.
they signed off on that.
Yeah.
And
And I'll say that their threshold is 70% of grass establishment, not 100%.
that's why I said it's for erosion control, not for landscape.
Right.
Yeah, I understood. What's your expectation though?
So if there's a punch list item where they need to reseed and they come back out and reseed and stabilize that, and that meets the punch list.
Okay, but as we said, they addressed the punch list in the middle of November, when you and I both know the grass isn't going to grow. So does that mean, okay, they're done? They planted grass we know is not going to grow, but as long as they put seed down, they're done?
It's well, it's not going to grow until spring. If the seed's still there, then it's going to grow.
Well, we're still waiting.
I'm saying, it takes seed, it takes sunlight, and it takes water to grow grass. And so
So you're telling me if we plant grass at Thanksgiving time, it's going to come up in the spring? I don't think so.
Yes,
You agreed with me last month, so I don't know. if it's-
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah, I don't know what the timing is of aerating and seeding. I know that there's companies that are still doing it now.
Yeah, well, there's temporary seeding and you could speak to it better than me.
Well, no, there's aerating and seeding being done now.
Yeah, but we're at the end of the season now. So, I mean, they're not going to be doing it at Thanksgiving and guaranteeing it's going to grow.
so I guess the bottom line is that Jim Majewski has, and I have committed to assisting the HOA and addressing this item going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate that. We would appreciate a little more communication, so we don't have to keep coming. You know, if somebody reached out to us like I had asked and was suggested last month, we wouldn't all had to come. But we got
Does the
very little.
HOA have irrigation at these spots?
No, we don't. No, we don't.
Does that add to the problem based on what we had the
it
first
could
couple?
It could in
months of
some
summer?
spots, it could potentially.
Okay.
You know, we just want to get it started correctly and then we'll take care of it.
But I
it's
mean,
gotta be
well,
started
here's the
correctly.
thing though, if you seed now and you have good seeding for the next 3 weeks and you have another dry spring or summer, you're still not getting growth if you don't have irrigation at those spots.
If they, yeah, I would agree. Agree.
I mean, it's just a thought.
One question. So when you assumed the takeover of the HOA.
Yes.
Did the HOA, did that agreement include the punch list would be completed?
The punch list hadn't been done yet. The,
But was that a condition of the transfer or no? Yes, between the HOA and the
yeah,
developer.
there was, the developer controlled the HOA up
Right.
until I believe it was September. But as far as a completion of a punch list, no, there was no formal,
Yeah.
we're new at this, and, we're elected to the board.
Yeah.
I don't know that there were any conditions. I think there was just an election and they gave up 2 seats and the homeowners assumed 2 seats, so we had control. That's,
Just, we've dealt with these kinds of issues in the past where it takes a while for the developer and frequent calls, shaming, which is why,
yeah.
and it's Ryan Homes, right?
Ryan Holmes they were the home builders.
Okay.
They weren't,
So they built the home, and that's
built
the
the
other
homes,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So the developer purchased the land, put in the public improvements, and that's what we hold escrow on.
Right. Okay.
And then they sell the lots to a home builder who comes in and builds the home and is responsible for the lot.
Okay. And as I understand, it, Ryan does not have any other current development projects in the township.
My knowledge, no.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is just having irrigation in that place after you seed, because it doesn't matter. You need sun, and then you need water. If you're not going to irrigate those areas, you're never going to get grass
Well,
to grow there regardless.
At least if it's done properly at the proper time, then we'll take it from there.
Well, you can't control droughts though, right? So we could have another drought next spring and summer, and then we lay seed down and nothing grows.
You're right, but it has to be done right to begin with.
So
If the seed is put in right and the spring and there's a drought, and that's on us.
So if we
But
can, if we can help facilitate the developer coming back and doing aeration and proper seeding at this site between now and
I mean,
the end of the month,
yeah,
I
it
think
has to be
that would
quick.
probably, at that point, would you assume responsibility?
If it's done properly, yeah. Yeah, if it's verified that it's done properly, yeah, then we would be responsible.
So aerating and seeding the areas that are not growing grass right now, if that's
Yeah.
done before the end of the month, the HOA would assume the responsibility for the grass. to
For the
grow
lawns,
in the
yes.
Spring, okay.
Yes.
I mean, does that sound equitable? Does that sound equitable to you guys? I mean,
Like I said, we're here to help the HOA.
yeah, I mean, we want to facilitate it as well. Obviously, we don't want a development in the township that has, bad brown grass. I mean,
Yeah, I
obviously, we
mean,
want it to
that's-
look, we want
I
it to
mean,
look good.
we have 62 homeowners that are, paid quite a bit for their homes and I think they don't think it's unreasonable for them to expect the grass to grow. We had no idea what was going to happen because when most of us moved in, the developer wasn't done yet.
Yeah.
So we kind of relied on you to make sure that it was done properly.
I agree.
And then when I checked, they said, oh, the money's already released. And I said, "Well, we don't have much leverage now, so good
Yeah,
luck."
no, and that's why I was asking our solicitor if we have any recourse.
Yeah.
I think we all experienced dead lawns this summer. I think you guys timing wise, maybe we're in
Yeah.
a spot where they were just planting grass and trying to establish it during a drought is probably going to be some of a challenge. I'm not saying that it's all the drought. I think if the developer goes back and does what he's supposed to do and then says, I did what I was supposed to do. Now water is an act of God. That's either on the HOA or God to take care of it. I think that that's fair. Now, I am hearing in the audience that there's an issue with trees as
Well, they're
well.
concerned about, I can't speak as to if they replaced what was on the drawing. Because I sent you pictures of areas that had trees that died, that there's no trees were
They just
put back.
removed them.
So I don't know if you're verifying that all the landscaping that they were supposed to do is done. I don't know.
Is there a statute on follow-up of an inspection on a development once it's done, Dave? Like where we can go back and say, hey, the developer was supposed to do this. They didn't do this. They cut some of these trees down and now it's not really meeting what the land development is.
But there's a warranty on the trees though, too.
There should be.
Yeah, you would think if you planted the trees in November that they shouldn't be
The
dead in
warranty
the
only
spring.
covers the tree. It doesn't cover the planting of the tree or the labor of somebody coming and replanting the trees, right?
Yeah, it does.
It does?
Typically, this is my line of work. I design this stuff. So there's typically, and this is typical, it's not the same in every case, but when you do any sort of tree planting, there's usually a 1-year warranty on the trees. Typically, sometimes if you pay more, you can get it 2, sometimes even a 3.
We'd be happy with one.
I got you.
We'd be happy if they live
So-
6 months.
That's not a law that the township enforces. or
No, I
anything like that,
understand
but
that. That's
usually
just
an agreement
standard procedure.
exactly, that's a standard procedure. So that's and what you're talking about, not the root balls and how they weren't taking off the whatever.
Yeah.
they
mean,
had them in the containers or whatever it was. That's just poor practice, how people.
yeah, I mean,
Nice.
we spent
Um,
$3,000 to have somebody tell us they didn't do it right. Well, we kind of knew that, but we figured we'll hire a
Yeah.
professional.
The other thing, when you're talking about the grass, I'd be concerned, developers are notorious for this, is when you're gonna plant grass, they compact the soil. I mean, grass anything only grows in good soils, right? That's pretty basic. But a lot of developers, and we've talking about one at Memorial Park that we're trying to get to finish something up. They put in the wrong materials. They'll put in rock or they'll compact they'll put in clays. They'll, instead of putting.
Well, that's what we have. We have clay.
They'll put it on the bottom and put the stuff that goes on the bottom on top. It's
Yeah.
a mess and nothing ever grows. So I guess my question is, when you go out there, what do the soils look like? Are they compacted? They're
clay.
like there's some
It's
topsoil?
clay.
Are they the proper soil? You know, I mean, and I'm not trying to, just little things to look for to have a fighting chance to get stuff to grow.
I think that they are compacted. I think there is some clay in there. I think that there was topsoil placed and some of it eroded, but yeah, I think aeration and overseeding will establish it.
A couple inches of topsoil on top of that, and usually.
Right.
So that's how you typically deal with grass. With the trees, you got to make sure you got to get good material and you got to make sure they're installed properly. That's number one. And that's 1 and 2, I guess. But he won't see that once the trees are planted, because you only see what's above the ground. I mean, you can see if there's roots exposed, and obviously that's terrible, and that wouldn't pass inspection. If they have the mount, how you see people put mounds of whatever around the little volcanoes, that's a terrible idea too. So you could not pass inspection there. But if the tree looks above ground like it was installed correctly, it's difficult for an inspector to do it. But it's also, you also got to figure out a way to hold the developer accountable from an HOA perspective. And I know that's what you're trying to do, and we're trying to help you with it.
Yeah, we appreciate
That step.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as far as recourse, I don't know that the security that they put up, was it in the form of a surety bond? Or was it in the form of cash? Because if they had a surety bond, if they're like the surety, I mean, I build buildings. Surety bonds are good for 2 years. So in other words, if you find a defect within 2 years and they've already been notified, then they would be, but if they didn't have, if they just put up cash and you gave them their cash back, I don't,
How do we find that out?
I haven't, but I haven't looked at Yardley Woods in a long time. So.
Yeah.
Can you do that to see what kind of bond?
Yeah,
it
well,
was?
we'll take a look at whatever we can to try to find out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Along those lines, Mr. Chair, if I could suggest that we add to, we're going to be in 2 weeks. The next meeting's agenda, that on the engineer's report, we have a status update to see where we're at on this. So that we know we're tracking to it, and then we're publicly reviewing it.
Yeah, and if I could be provided with that, so that if maybe I don't have to come to find out what it says,
Yeah.
I would appreciate that, as we're the ones that end up paying for the report. We'd like to get a copy of it.
Yep.
I appreciate your help. I don't know if any of my other homeowners have anything to add, but anybody have anything they want me to add? Hearing nothing?
All the homeowners raise their hands, so we
Yeah.
know which ones.
If you could just,
How many of us are homeowners?
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't just hanging out to see what's next.
if you do, I could tell they were so engaged in all our prior conversations. If you do have a question, sir, I'd love to hear it. If you could just come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Just wait till you get there. Thank you.
You have, excuse me for my accent, my name is Alexander Litvak. I live in this development. I would like to know specifically questions for engineer. Did they do final survey? Because I observe water coming not where it's supposed to come. Because they didn't do, obviously I didn't notice if they did, but it shouldn't be graded as it graded. It's obvious. You then don't have to put any surveying instrument because you see where the water goes.
So there was no final survey that surveyed the grades. It was a final survey for an as-built survey for the sanitary sewer system and the storm sewer system. So making sure that the storm sewer system was installed in accordance with the plan and the sanitary sewer system. There was not a survey of the final grading.
Okay. There is another question. They just lower an inlet about 12 inches. So I don't know, is it resulted of final survey or why it's happened? If they did final surveys, they should be done it long ago. It's, they just did it. And they adjusted the grade about, I would say, 35 feet. And after that, it's it goes the wrong direction.
That's work that I'm not aware of.
Okay,
So I'm not sure who did that. I'm not sure who ordered that work to be done. I don't know.
okay.
But we'll look into it.
It's just a question because I would assume, being a civil engineer for many years, after you finish everything, you do final surveys or you follow the grades. And I didn't see it happen. I didn't, maybe it did, but I didn't notice.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, yeah, real quick, I just want to confirm it's Yardley Woods, right?
Yardley Woods.
Well, Yardley Woods, okay. I'm sorry, just your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Terry Wall and I'm at 3 Griffin Way. I just kind of want to give you guys an understanding. It's more of an emotional understanding. When we moved here, we investigated all the developers in the area and Ryan Woods had a pretty decent product and we bought it for a lot of money. And so when Jerry was voted to the board, he has to answer to all of the neighbors for everything that happens. So when we found out that the money was let go and all of our plants, like he's not even talking about that, all of the plants that were planted in our front yards, all of them died and they had to be removed. And the association, our money paid for those plants, whether we are responsible for them or not, they died. And when we had the arborists come out and they took them out of the ground, it was really clear that they weren't planted properly. There was clay. I planted flowers. I dug out the clay and put the proper soil in and my yard like bursted with flowers. That's not, I don't know how to do that. That was like, I thought, what the heck is this? How hard is that? There's trees dying. I mean, these people paid a lot of money to live here. You guys it was before the bond was let go. I think it was the township, I would imagine, came out and replaced all of the sewer. What are those things called where the water goes down? All of them had to be replaced. They were all done incorrectly. There's like multiple things. Now it's the trees. Like last week, Jerry was talking, or now it's the grass. Last week, he was talking about the trees. He has to answer to all of these neighbors. And I guess we're here because the developer wants to have nothing to do with the development. He's moved on. But we're stuck with this product and we feel like, I don't know who you would have went to, if you would have went to the board or who you would have went to and said, hey, we're releasing this. You know, who checks that out with the people who live there? And we understand, we're not stupid. We understand that, you know, you need water in a certain area. We get that. We've already thought about how is that area where all the dogs play going to get watered? How are we going to keep the grass? Like we're trying to figure out all that where that might have not been the right way to go, but there's other things that can be done. And we don't appreciate the time and all the other stuff that went on here tonight, but we appreciate the help that you give us for this situation. As minor as it sounds to you, it's huge. It's where we go to be happy. It's our home. I'm sure you can understand.
100%. Yeah. And I apologize for the demeanor of the meeting that you guys had to endure.
It just became a little bit embarrassing for us because,
Yes,
we voted you guys in.
Yeah.
And we were a little disappointed in some of the things we saw tonight, but we all have bad nights, right?
Appreciate the comment. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask Andy?
Sure.
So to me, it's based on all these descriptions of stuff not growing in the way the stormwater and everything else. And the gentleman who's a civil engineer was talking about the inlet that moved. It sounds like their civil contractor did not do a good job. I have no idea, but it just does, it sounds like some really basic things. I don't know the development. I didn't walk it when they were building it. I just don't know. But so I want to make sure that if we have a lesson learned when we're moving forward with future developments that come through, to make sure that the inspections that we do, whether we have to keep an eye on stuff like that. Like if we see a developer, soils, or that's what I do. So I think about that all the time. If we see a developer putting in the, compacting soils or putting rock where topsoil should be, that we call that out as best we can ahead of time. That moving the inlet 12 inches to me that sounds like it's possibly compliance issue or code issue we have to look at, right?
It sounds to me like that was done recently.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing too. So that's concern. So that's concerning. I understand.
Could you just step back up to the microphone just so they can record you?
That's why I brought it up, because I understood that they had changed catch basins. It was signed off on in February or March. So we start making a big stink about drainage, and the developer says there's nothing wrong. And all of a sudden they're moving to catch basins. Why do we think that is? Obviously, I think that maybe they were on the punch list and they realized they didn't do it. And obviously it wasn't verified, but I'm pretty sure that they changed a couple catch basins, even though they said there was nothing wrong with them. And the problem is we didn't know what they were doing. Nobody here knew what they were doing. Even Mr. Majeski, I don't think he knew what they were doing.
I don't think anyone could know what they were doing if they were doing it outside of the process.
Yeah, they just came out. They said, we got a notice like 3 days before saying we're going to come out. They send it to the HOA, our management company. And they said, we're going to come out and fix some grass and replace some trees under warranty. That's all it said. So we really don't know what they did, what they planned to do, what they didn't plan to do.
I know you're good with a camera. If you can take some pictures of that other stuff, that the inlets that they moved and whatnot, please do that. That would be helpful. I'll take them.
Is there any other ideas or feedback? I think you're going to look into the bond for us, Dave. I appreciate
Well,
that.
we'll take a look at the file and see what type of security documents and instruments were applicable, and see if there's any recourse. We'll take a look at what we can. So
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment? General public comment from anybody? Hearing none, moving on to agenda item number 15, discussion items. I did want to make a comment. The township is currently in the process of interviewing candidates for township manager. I believe we got a couple of different batches of resumes. We've sorted through them. I want to thank Chief Caluzzi for being part of this process. He's really helped us out tremendously during this process. We've been working with an outside firm, and beginning November 1st, I believe, November 1st and then November 2nd, we have interviews lined up with some of the candidates. So we hope to narrow the candidates down following week. Hopefully we have a narrower scope of candidates by that time, and then we're going to do some face-to-face interviews with some of the candidates. So just wanted to give everybody an update on that. Any other discussion items that we wanted to discuss?
More of an announcement that I wasn't quick enough on earlier.
Sure.
But related to Veterans Day. Veterans of American Legion Post 317 and VFW Post 6393 will be conducting their Veterans Day observance ceremony on Friday, the 11th of November at 11 a.m. at the Afton and Delaware Avenue Monument, directly across from the Yardley Inn. Everyone is invited to join the ceremony.
Thanks, Dan. Any other discussion items? Any public comment on discussion items? Hearing none. Supervisor reports. I have nothing to report at this time. Supervisor Weiss.
Yes, the ad hoc property committee met last week and are developing a master plan for Patterson Farm. They listen to a presentation from Avis Young, a noted firm, I understand, architectural firm. And they wish to engage them to help form the master plan. So I don't know, since we've approved the process, do we need a vote? If we need a vote, we'll have to wait until the next meeting. If otherwise, if there's no objection by the board, we can pass along that they can use Avis and Young to help them with the master plan. The project director or project manager would be Jennifer Stark, who's a member of the HARB, longtime member of the community, and very well experienced with these type of projects. So I'll put it up to the solicitor if we need a vote.
Well, if the township's going to expend funds for that or something like that, or they probably should have a vote. It doesn't mean it can't be ratified. Next time, excuse me, if there's a consensus based upon the information you have, although, you know, we have no paperwork. I know Ms. Stark worked with her for years in different capacities, so I'll defer to the board whether they want, at least as a consensus, agree to do that and then have it officially voted on next time, if time is of the essence. So this is done before the next meeting. I guess that's the issue.
Is there a consensus to have them move forward?
I would, oh, go ahead.
You know, I definitely support the idea, but I also, you know, want to make sure we're following the rules. So if this is an expenditure that we haven't specifically, I'm confused on that. Oh, do we already approve the expenditure and this is just, ooh, we're spending it on, or?
Well, I mean, I think we'd have to have details about not to exceed and what the scope of the work is and what type of work they're doing.
Right, I think,
you know,
yeah, excuse me, that, I think that during I was not at the meeting, but from what I heard is that their fee to at least get things started was about $20,000. It's a 6-month project. 6 to
yeah,
9
I would
project.
recommend that we wait till the next meeting and decide all that then.
Yeah, and I'll circle back with Dennis. I've been, you know, I read the minutes from the Thursday meeting, and I'll just circle back with him to make sure that the proposal for the Lower Makefield Township Patterson Master Plan is in that range. And then we can put it up for a consideration to vote.
You also want to see whatever the report is too, everything else that's.
Yeah,
proposed.
I think each member of the board should get
Well,
the
beforehand.
proposal.
Yeah, maybe what we can do is, well, I'll decide whether we're going to do presentation or if we just want to, I mean, I can share this with the rest of the board. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have no idea what they want to do, obviously, yet. This is something, you know, I'm all for planning. I think we all are, to Suzanne's point. I would personally want to RFP. There are a lot of really good firms that do this type of work specifically. So I don't know Ms. Stark very well as the HARB liaison. Great, but we do have a responsibility to the town. Covering everything. So I personally would like to have an RFP developed, make sure that we're all on board with the RFP, and not for nothing, that type of project, there are state grants readily available for that specific cultural resources, historic resources planning that our historic commission is trying to put forth. So we might be able to get this paid for by the state because we are a what's the term? We are what's the community something, because we have a HARB and I'm totally blanking on the term. Certified something community.
Yeah.
Sorry for the blanking.
PHRMC or something.
PHMC, Pennsylvania Historic Museum Commission, has a program where certified local government, there it is, CLG. That puts us on a higher ranking to get grants specifically like this to do historic planning to cover exactly this type of project.
Have they applied for any of those grants in the past?
They're working on it right now.
When did they apply for them?
That's a great question.
The HARB is
Because I would
working on
imagine that
for the ad hoc committee? The Harbor's working on a grant for the ad hoc committee?
No.
Oh,
They're-
sorry.
No. So Historic Commission, not Harb, the Historic Commission, they're sort of sister commission. They have been they've been working with Mr. Majewski actually to see what priorities they could have and what projects they may do to help the township. Obviously, Patterson Farm is high up on the list. And one of the items that they've been doing is identifying grant opportunities. And because we're a certified local government, there are several grant opportunities to do exactly this for those types of numbers. So it's a great opportunity to get PHMC involved, as they're also looking to complete the process that was never completed to get Patterson Farm listed on the historic register, which also gets us more opportunity for public funding to do more planning and other stuff in the future. So
How long have we owned Patterson Farm?
20 years, maybe more.
20 years, and in 20 years, we've never been able to get it on the National Registry of Historic Places. I don't think it's going to happen.
no, so it is deemed eligible. It is eligible.
But why hasn't it happened in 20 years?
They have the overly simplified version. Dr. Hines, if you're watching, I'm not trying to offend you, but the way overly simplified version is that they submitted the process a while, and I forget the year, so I apologize. They submitted the application a while back. And it wasn't her, I believe it was an outside group. I'm blanking on Heritage Conservancy, maybe. I don't want to speak there, but there were comments that come back from the agency with questions, and I don't believe that they ever responded. So they're trying to work on that right now.
My only fear with that approach is that it's been 20 years and there's been no movement. And with every passing season that happens at Patterson Farm, there's more and more dilapidation of those buildings that it's going to be.
So it doesn't have to be on the historic register to get those grants. So I agree with you.
So even
But the CLG status that we already have can help. We can leverage that to get grants come the spring or soon, because there are grant periods.
I just don't, my fear is that we're going to make the same mistake that boards before us have made, is that we're hoping that Santa Claus is going to show up one of these days and bring us this big bag of money and say, with the.
No matter what it is, it won't be that big.
I think
James.
I think I'd rather have movement on this. I just sent the presentation, you guys, if you can just take a look at it. You have 2 weeks to kind of digest it. And if there's any questions on it, I mean, if we want to get Dennis in front of us, we can get Dennis in front of us. I'm okay with that as well. But I think moving it in the direction of somewhere rather than holding out, and maybe if we have a plan in place and it's shovel ready, maybe that grant becomes even, more readily available to us.
For that.
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah, I just don't want to lose time on it. I think.
Yeah, but from a plan perspective, and Dave, you were making great comments earlier about needing a scope of work, terms and conditions, rates not to exceed, et cetera. We needed a fully vetted proposal too, to make sure we know what the heck.
Yeah, I just say, I mean,
None if it doesn't be a certain amount, right? I mean, this is what we made the ad hoc committee for, but I think we're on to a discussion item, except we're on a different part of the agenda. So maybe next week or next time.
Any other comments or feedback regarding that? Did you want to say anything else about any of your other committees, Fred, or is that it?
I just want to restate that the recommendation from the ad hoc committee was to engage Avison Young. And the solicitor said we should put that on the agenda at the next meeting and vote on it. That's fine with me. I have nothing further to add with the other.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, I've sent that presentation to all the supervisors and included Mr. Stedman. If there's any questions for Mr. Stedman, or if we feel like he needs to be in front of us at the next meeting, I will make sure that he has our audience. Moving on to Supervisor Grenier, any updates on your report, supervisor reports?
Yes. Speaking, since we're in a Harb kind of mood, Harb actually has had some, and I'll probably say this a couple more times because they'll come in front of us really soon. Harb met for, I don't know, the 4th or 5th time with the folks at Cricket Preserve to review the proposed designs for the barn at Cricket Preserve. Really interesting features. I will say it's some of the folks we mentioned today, Fred, that you were talking about are on Harb. and participated. It was nice to see from a process perspective. There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of great improvements made to the design of the barn. Just through that conversation to make some great improvements across the board. Harp seems to be happy, so they've recommended approval of a certificate of appropriateness for the design. So that has to come before us to vote on. So I think that's ready for the barn. It's the barn. They have not yet, they being Cricket Preserve, has not yet put anything in front of Harp relative to the house. They're not ready yet.
Do you want to do that all in one swoop, or do you want?
No, they
Pieces?
wouldn't, we'd want to do it in pieces
Pieces?
for everyone's benefit, I think.
When do you think they'll be ready for the,
They would
For
do
the
it,
barn.
they would have come today.
tonight?
On, I
Okay.
think, but no, it's really, I'm interested to see what the board thinks after all this, because everyone really tried to stick to what we wrote in the ordinance relative to protecting the integrity of the historic structures. And even from there, improvements were made because of Harp's input, and I can't thank them enough because it was an interesting process, and it wasn't contentious. We worked together, good, including the developer, so kudos for that.
Nice.
I think it'll be maybe not everyone's cup of tea, but it'll be interesting to see the board of supervisor meeting. Other than that, historic commission met, but they did not have a quorum. And then planning commission and the ERC did not meet.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Supervisor Blondie?
Yeah, I mean, you heard a lot about what the EAC is doing under community announcements, but I did want to also give a shout out to their work because it's really in partnership with Monica and Public Works and other instances where they leverage their experience to help us pick the right trees to plant that'll be most successful. So thank you to all of them as well.
Thank you. And Supervisor Lewis?
Just one quick update. The Citizens Traffic Commission met this week, reviewed some items, but we are down a member. One of our members has resigned from the board. Keller Arnold, we thank her for her service. So if you are a frustrated amateur traffic engineer, if you're concerned about traffic, not just in your neighborhood, but overall, if you're concerned about traffic safety, consider applying for the Citizens Traffic Commission. It's a lovely group of people and we deal with interesting topics. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to agenda item number 17, any other business? Agenda item number 18, appointments to boards and commissions. I believe there is somebody in the golf committee that is going to be expiring at the end of this year. He did reach out to me and said that he was interested in maintaining his position. It's the chairman, Rich Eisner. So I don't know if we want to make a motion tonight to reappoint him for next year or.
Did Mr. Eisner write to you, the board?
Did.
He did formally?
Yeah, he did.
I would suggest just have it put it on the agenda for next.
Yeah, for the next one. Yep.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yep. It's been on there forever.
Well, we don't usually put who we're appointing on specifically, but if you want to share the letter or people want to.
Yeah, I'll send it to, I believe I had it already with Katie and she was going to put it on the next one, but yeah, I'll share it with you. Any other appointments to boards? Not that I know of. That being said, entertain a motion to.
So moved, adjourn, please.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Have a good night.
Night, everyone.
Dave.